Well, here we are. Our last best of recap for now. Lostbelt 6 is right around the corner, so we're wrapping up with our 5.5 Heian-kyo recap. Stay tuned for all possible thoughts and feelings on Lostbelt 6 later on this channel. And make sure to sub and tune in this weekend to Let's Talk FGO for a Lostbelt 6 pregame. Anyway, I'll be back after the flip for a word to our patrons. You have fun now.
Struggling forces, plungers and worry. The missing pieces leave confusion, darken the skies.
We'll see them when we get there. So, originally, when talking about Lostbelt 5.5, the night of, because thanks to the power of time zones, it wasn't actually that super late when we got started. I tried to keep some notes about some of the stuff, in the style we adopted for the first parts, the 2 parts of Lostbelt 5. But then, very quickly, I stopped doing that for the need of speed. And honestly, I think, both of us are already done. We can say that in general, you can feel this one is shorter.
Yes.
While there's still lots of cool stuff in it, and, it hits a lot of the satisfying story arc elements, it is the shortest Lostbelt by far, and honestly, has been shorter than some Singularity stories, even. It might even be shorter than quite a few EOR stories, what you call it? 16 segments long with the prologue, technically, though that's not directly related to the plot. So, yeah, it's very direct. Overall, I like this one. It's got a lot of themes and stuff that I do like, but it's very fast paced. You move through a lot of stuff very repeatedly. So the prologue is interesting because this does kind of set our tone. Right after Lostbelt 5 ends. We've cleared Olympus, we return back to base, so we can kind of, as usual for a lot of story releases, talk about the stuff that happened and kind of set up our plot, right? So learn some good facts. 5.5 is set basically immediately after Lostbelt 5 concludes. Literally the prologue is right after, and then I think it's only a day or two later by the time we actually do the event storyline here. There's also some interesting information on the interactions with the foreign god. Thanks to observation and other nonsense, we figure out that the foreign god appears to be confined to South America, basically moved to the South American Lostbelt and hasn't done anything else since then. And it's, pretty explicitly theorized this is because of whatever Wodaime did. Inhibited it from moving. And also, power scaling explained that, the foreign god in manifesting with the spirit origin of Beast 7 is nearly as strong as Gatia, but not quite as strong. And so we couldn't scratch her if we tried. We do not require the materials to work on this because we could only beat up Gatia because very specific things happened.
As you do in Fate.
Yeah. The question also comes up of could we just use the Black Barrel, and we do actually get some breakdown of the mechanics here, which is pretty good for the lore. Explains that the Black Barrel can only measure longevity as understood by creatures of the Earth. So aliens that don't play by our rules are excluded. Obviously, the creatures and things we have, shot with the Black Barrel leveling there, were the Olympians who explicitly were in the context of Earth. Creatures shot with the Black Barrel and stuff in, Angel Notes, are types, ultimate ones of planets that are in the same solar system as Earth, so you can at least compare their longevity, to the length of the solar system and so on. For aliens that are, completely from outside our solar system, it's just not really working. Additionally, the foreign god can manipulate cosmic mechanics. They talk about, the black hole she creates and how that's, directly futzing with the underlying mechanics of the universe, not just the Earth. So they're operating on a scale of, cosmic entities. We can't really calculate their lifespan in normal methods. I compared this conversation to Kardashev scale type conversations. For those of you who don't know, Kardashev scale is a hypothetical scale of civilizations. It was developed by a Soviet scientist in the 60s, I think. Might have been the 70s. But in a lot of early spaceflight stuff. And basically, his name was Kardashev, by the way. The idea basically goes, there are 3 types of civilizations in terms of energy harnessing. A Kardashev Type 1 civilization uses 100% of the energy output of their planet, or put another way, utilizes 100% of the energy from their star that reaches their home planet. We're still a couple of orders of magnitude away from this one, by the way, in real life. A Type 2 civilization uses 100% of the energy output of their home star through a Dyson sphere or Matryoshka brain or something. And then a hypothetical Kardashev Type 3 civilization uses all of the available energy resources in a galaxy. So, as you can see, the scales go up very high, but in lots of, hypothetical discussion of life or sci-fi tropes, you see these referenced a lot. Sometimes there are also subscales, like Type 0, to cover where we're at right now, where we're not quite at a whole 100% of a planet. But basically, the foreign god is a cosmic scale entity that is As far as we know, even though it is manifested with the spirit origin of Beast 7, there is so much about it we do not understand that we cannot apply our normal rules to. So we can't just shoot it with the black barrel.
No.
Good to know. Scratch that off our bucket list.
Now
and
we know.
Since there's nothing we can do, and it's trapped in Lostbelt 7, we don't need to freak out or do anything right away. Sion is like, the world will not explode tonight. Go to bed. And then we get called the next day, and Sion's like, my mistake. The world might explode.
You're just like, yeah, damn it.
Also, Gordel still doesn't have an office. Personally, I would just chill on the storm border. That's probably got a great wardroom. But anyway, he wants an office. Yeah, that was implied by the Kyrie conversation that it wanted to move, but we won't see where that actually goes until we get there. There's a lot of good conversation about beasts we'll come back to later, so there might be some interesting implications to the using of Beast 7. But, we talk a lot about planetary scale entities, so we are still not yet at a danger level where we are over Gatia, technically. Obviously, we had to, sacrifice a lot and work our asses off to beat Gatia, but, we haven't quite hit the escalation on the sequel. This one's just more of a puzzle we got to figure out. We'll see if they actually capitalize on all of that. Also, Area 51 does come up in this prologue. They do explicitly mention that it seems like the influence of the foreign god when it actually, started from Area 51, and that happened before we bleached everywhere. A lot of fun stuff. But now we get into the actual Heian-kyo story. So, we've got a singularity belt.
A little weird.
Yeah. You guys, everybody should know this if they're getting into it, but especially if you've completed it. They even say it in the release where they're like, hey, you don't have to clear Shimosa to get here. There's gonna be some Shimosa spoilers. 5.5 really is like a callback to Shimosa thematically, so I think that's even why they talk about it being, a singularity first. But there's also some weird lost beltishness that we explicitly need to worry about. And there's a lot of explanation about how sending servants to singularities. Well, yeah, Shimosa was a baby lost belt. This comes back later in the story. This is something we talked about before, where Shimosa was very, very plot relevant. Not only was Limbo there, but there were explicit mentions of the Lost Belt type system. But the fact that was a singularity that could become a Lost Belt type situation was also very explicitly brought up here as a comparison. We do a lot of recapping of why we want to punch Limbo. But also in that, we basically understand where it's happening. It's happening in the Heian capital, which is just called Kyo, the capital city. Eventually would be known as Kyoto, but is not yet. Right around the year 1000. There's a lot of weird vibes going on, and everybody gets those heebie-jeebies that Limbo is involved, because we know he got away. And they explain, like I said before, how sending servants on singularities work. It requires, strong connections and lots of verifiable intel. When we were actually repairing the 7 great singularities, the original Grand Order mission, we could not do that because those were very complex and bullshit. We could send some servants on pseudo-singularities because those had less difference levels we had to worry about. Though, obviously, in a lot of cases, they were interference with. For instance, they talked about how in Shinjuku, we were supposed to get servants sent with us, but there were some blockages. But explicitly, in other cases, we did have servants with us, like Agartha and Salem. So, Heian-kyo is constructed so that the only servants we can race shift with us are the specifically invited Fuma Kotaro and Kato Danzo. And then it doesn't even matter, because only Danzo gets sent with us. Even Mash is left at home, which kind of adds to the, EOR callbacks as well.
Yes.
And honestly, in general, this is a later plot point, but it's not too much later, so it's not too much of a spoiler if you're following kind of beat by beat. We're basically without conversation with home base through, almost all of this arc.
Yes.
We get one exposition moment where we can have our usual, communications roundtable with everybody, and Sherlock is actually there to drop straight facts on us. He even gets so far as giving a early definite conclusion. He's like, it's definitely Limbo. And we're like, Holmes, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, no, it's that fucking obvious, guys. It's definitely Limbo.
I mean, if I remember correctly, he literally put his name in the errors or something.
Yeah, no, he's like, this is a note I had much later. Doman is a classical villain. He signs everything. He lets you know it's him. He monologues about his plan. Later, he deliberately leaves witnesses so he can monologue about his plan. But also, he's very squelchy. Please stop.
There's a lot of black scenes where you just hear body
squishing around.
Yeah.
Very gross.
Very.
But before Sherlock can actually, explain more, Doman just dials up the jamming and we get cut off. And we don't speak to Chaldea until the end of the scenario. So they do a lot with this scenario to kind of make you, especially early on, to make you feel kind of alone and isolated, and then, building up your allies in this time period. Before we race shift, we have a conversation with Chaldea's Kintoki where he's like, Oh, fuck yeah, I can't wait to go back with you, boss. We're gonna have a golden time. We're gonna meet me. I get to high-five myself. And then Da Vinci is like, no, actually, you can't go. And then he's like, not golden. That's okay, just meet me and high-five me. I'm sure we'll be friends. Golden. It turns out he was right about everything.
He was so right. He literally, I think he says he can't go, but like the thing he has to do is he has to find him and Raiko, because he just says straight up, they'll believe you.
Yes. Genji stuff is crazy enough, we'll believe you. Also, Kintoki didn't phrase it this way because he wouldn't, but Kintoki understands that he himself, Kintoki, is enough of a himbo that he's just going to go with it. This arc, it has a lot of big himbo energy for past Kintoki.
It really, well, like, if we're talking about Kintoki, like, I feel like this, believe it or not, like, I really feel like Kintoki is the main character of this entire thing and not the master.
I mean, he really is, because it's about, he is the central character arc. We don't really go through any changes in this story. We do have some kind of moments of connection with Kintoki, talking about kind of like the weight of fighting for things and fighting people and doing heroism. But like, we don't really question our motivations. Like, there's no hesitation when people ask you like, hey, what are you doing here, kid? What's your story? You're just like, I'm fighting to take back my world. Like just all you can say. It's true.
Like, there's even one point at the end where they're talking about the fight, and it's like, you talk about, like, I really liked it here, and it's like, and you're like, why? Because, like, I didn't have to hold anything back. It's just like, no, I was just here, I did my fucking thing.
Yeah. And I think that's why this one is pitched as a singularity. It's a deliberate throwback, and thematically it is that. We get to be time cops again. There is a bad timeline. There's one guy fucking it up with one thing, and he summons some extra guys to fuck it up. But it's very simple. And we can get into the discussion of because there's some early bits. We run into new enemies, the Tsuchigumos, who are out causing trouble in our neighborhood, kind of a thing. We get some early character building with Danzo. We ran into Suna very early, and I think there's a lot to talk about him because this does a lot of work to kind of pitch him as a character, right?
Right.
Which it does not do with the other two Heavenly Kings. They are very explicitly written out of the story.
Well, if I remember correctly, there's not a lot on the other two Heavenly Kings.
Yeah, and that was the thing I was going to say. Sakata Kintoki has a lot of mythology around him, especially with the Kintaro stuff, as a character points out later. I'll avoid naming them right away off the top, just in case people want to pull that ejection lever. But as several characters I think actually bring up later, those legends don't get applied to Sakata Kintoki until, like, the Edo period later. So Heian-Kintoki's not entirely sure what people are talking about with that, but those legends do get applied to him, so he gets a greater mythology, and is a part of the legends about Raiko. And same with Watanabe no Suna, like, he has his own individual legends about his confrontation with Ibaraki on the bridge and stuff, which we actually get to see very early on. We get that one of those fights on the bridge where Ibaraki loses an arm. But also we see Medea Lily there, so we know that shit's not, like, quite right, Mm-hmm. But the other four Heavenly Kings are mostly just footnotes. We have their names are given. One of them is Urabe, I think, and I can't remember the fourth one. We know that they exist and they are part of the story, but in history they are not really well fleshed out. I think I talked about this when Heian-kyo was coming out. It's kind of like Shuten's other Oni buddies. We do at least see them named and they kind of show up, but they don't have any characterization, right? Like, technically, Hoshikuma Doji is in this story, which is, obviously very interesting because Hoshikuma or Hoshiguma is, there's a character somewhat based on those legends in Arknights, and I even ended up using that for one of the characters that shows up in the Fate AP homebrew that is on our channel. Mm-hmm. One of our player character masters got Hoshikuma. But as characters in this story, Hoshikuma, Torikuma, etc., some of the other guys are basically non-entities. Shuten and Ibaraki address them by name, but they don't even have, like, unique sprites. They just reuse a slightly recolored Oni King sprite from Oniland, and they have, like, no dialogue. They don't even have story sprites, which I found kind of interesting, right? I want to say here, this, for as short as it is, this Lostbelt story, this scenario, has a lot of extra pizzazz. Once again, the production values are really stepped up. Obviously, we knew that with Lostbelt 5, both parts, but this continues that trend, and even in non-big, like, cutscene parts, there are a lot of extra special effects in this, right? Right. So the fact that the Onis are just stomp sound, stock stomp and roar sound effects is kind of weird. It didn't really suck me out, but it was definitely something that I noticed.
They might not have had actually a good idea of what they want to do with them, honestly.
Yeah, or it might just be, like, for framing that, like, drawing those giant sprites again would just not work. But yeah, that the other Heavenly Kings are very similar, so we kind of skip them. But those other guys are pretty important. So technically this is skipping over some stuff, but I think it's important to discuss. We are pitched very early in this that there is a Grail War thing happening here. It is explicitly shown, and it is, pitched by an alleged letter by Abe no Seimei, who is mysteriously absent from the city.
Which is very weird.
Yes. This thing called the Imperial Holy Grail War, obviously kind of a callback to the Guda Guda Imperial Grail Wars as well. The couple of variations they've done of that over the years, including the FGO event. But this one, the Heian Imperial Grail War, is very interesting because it says that the master candidates will be picked from those with power. Kind of curious. And explicitly, only casters will be summoned. 7 foreign sorcerers, this is pitched to Lord Fujiwara no Michinaga.
The little shit.
Yeah. We know he's a gremlin. He's in here. He has big feudal lord energy. He is currently Minister of the Left.
I do appreciate they gave him an actual sprite, though.
Yes, no, he is not like a reused character. He is a storyline character. I don't think there's a lot of demand to de-NPC him, as it were, but it is good because he is not a minor character in this. Like, You think he might just be in flashbacks, but no. He comes up several times throughout the story. And it's good that he has a story sprite we can kind of bounce off of. That fits. It actually, slots into a lot of the other character arts we see. Though I joked about this earlier. Once again, that production level stuff. Suna has multiple story sprites. He's got his standard sprite, but then also a front-facing sprite for when he draws his sword. We constantly play the sword drawing and sword sheathing sound effect. It's cool. I like it, but also I noticed. I noticed that we really like those things and we want to use them. That's the programming team is like, ooh, we have assets. We're going to use those.
And just...
Yeah. But, Michinaga is pitched that this will involve the lives of 7 foreign casters who will be summoned from across time. They will be the only ones sacrificed. The winning master will get his wish granted, though how is not explained. And also this will ensure that the city of Kyo will have 1,000 years of peace.
I really like that 1,000 year peace idea.
Yes. Well, and it does work thematically because it's specifically the year 1028, I think. Now, while obviously we're not into the future, it's not, and even when this was written, this was 2 years ago, it was not, 2028. But Kintoki does actually bring this up later. He can be shockingly perceptive when he does. When you describe that you're from way in the future, you may have actually brought up, like, how far in the future. And you, the protagonist, are canonically from Japan about 1,000 years in the future. So, while those weren't 1,000 years of peace, Kintoki has an argument like, well, if you're here, and you're from Japan, and you're like from 1,000 years in the future, I guess we kind of don't need to worry about it, because Japan's obviously still here, right? Right, yes, good, Kintoki, thumbs up. You figured that out all by yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion in this chapter of the sub-theme of legacy and longevity, right? Michinaga really wants to secure that 1,000 years of peace, A lot of our, a decent number of our Genji characters are kind of concerned about actually, how long our clan will last and making sure to leave a legacy and how, we'll be perceived in helping people. Kintoki's also kind of trying to, figure out, what his deal is, and what his legacy is going to be kind of, trying to find his heroism.
Yeah, there is a particular character, I guess I can fucking say it.
Go for it.
Babbage's whole deal, talking about how, the world that he wanted to create and the expectations of that. I love the speech where he talks about encase your dreams in steel.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that was so good.
General vibes from this chapter is Babbage the real G here.
He really is.
As much as this chapter is a remix of Shimosa, it is also a heavy remix of London. This is kind of their opportunity to reuse a couple of the London characters. And obviously, Medea Lily also comes back, so it's a little bit of Okeanos as well, but a lot of London characters are in this, and we get to kind of see them in different lights. Babbage ends up being an antagonist, sort of. He is a obstacle we have to overcome, but he is still, much more positive than the kind of rando phase he was in London, where he just makes infinite helter-skelters to fuck with us, Yeah. But yeah, so there's a lot of comment about, your ideals, your dreams, your legacy kind of thing. What do you want to see? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a very weird, fucked up Grail War. As we are introduced, 2 of the 7 casters are already defeated. They were mastered by the other 2 Heavenly Kings, who are injured now. I know I've seen a couple of people in and about our Discord kind of wondering about, okay, why did we job 2 of the 7 characters beforehand? Some of this is to hype Suna up as an antagonist, because as we start, he is kind of our early opponent. We run into him right away, and so the fact that he's already taken out two pairs, it makes him seem stronger, but also I think gives you kind of the idea about, he's kind of lost his focus a little. He has not lost his way. The reverse of Don't Lose Your Way, because the other two masters who he injured and are taken out of the story by healing were the other Heavenly Kings. So, like, I felt that kind of gave us the impression of, like, oh, Watanabe Osuna is a little, like, he's really into this for some reason. He's kind of losing his focus a little bit in this Grail War shit, right?
Well, we talked about this earlier, but Suna, I feel, is, like, overly work-focused, and he's like, I'm really sold on that 1,000 Years of Peace, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm really sold.
And he has his own personal motivations, but the way he pitches it to, like, Kintoki, he's like, my guy, we have been directly ordered by the Minister of the Left to do the thing, so I'm gonna do the thing. Like, that. This is our mission. I'm go for it. So yeah, like, I don't mind it so much. Some of it was also a time constraint thing, though. Yes, they actually explained it some later in interviews, and I'll drop this because it's a pseudo spoiler, but I'll let you guys know. I believe the character that was name dropped in a interview was that they had gotten to the part where they were even designing an appearance for the Count of Cagliostro. I presume this is the servant that was mentioned later as the really interesting one, the one who could have gone far and actually been a good character in a Grail War. But obviously, for just writing and time constraints, they decided to just cut this character out entirely. So I believe that means the Count of Cagliostro has a design and has, like, plot stuff. It just hasn't come up yet. So we'll see if they decide to pull the trigger on that one. We know that sometimes these deep lore bits get really buried, as seen by the fact that, Dress of Heaven, Iris Veal has a line for Rasputin. We would not pull a trigger on that for years. But it came back. But yeah, I do think with stuff that comes out later, the fact that it's supposed to be the 7 is important. One, it's an obvious parody of the Grail War, which, of course, Toman would do this, right? Of course he would make it weird.
I mean, the first rule about a Holy Grail War is it can't be a normal Holy Grail War.
Right. There's
Ever.
always some bullshit, so the fact that it was 7, but they're all casters is like, yes, and yeah, we removed a couple of the characters for jobbing because we didn't really have characters for the other two Heavenly Kings, and we couldn't make another new servant when we had other new servants to do. I do feel kind of sad that, time makes fools of us all kind of a thing, but, because, like, we can spoil this bit a little. Ibuki as a character, Ibuki Doji, is very minimal. She is the subject of, like, one section of the story out of 16, and then is mostly gone. There's a little bit of payoff.
I want to say that about Kagikio as well. Like,
yes.
They have a little bit more interaction because...
Yeah. Kagikio comes up in 2 sections. I mean, obviously there's baggage about Kagikio's character design.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's another, like, very quick one and done. Like, the fact that it is Taira no Kagikio, the Genji killer, that's more of, like, a plot obstacle of, like, oh, shit, we've got all the Genji warriors on our side, but they won't help us at all versus this enemy. We've got to find something new, right?
Right.
Like, it works to get Shuten and Ibaraki back in the story. Or Shuten, mostly.
Cause that's what I feel like Kagikio was mostly to get Shuten. And you can't say there was a little bit about, Kintoki finding his ideals, but, like, I feel like they could have done that with almost anybody.
Yeah, literally any really strong character we could have done this. The fact that Ibuki Doji was a divine spirit was a big deal. I mean, I think thematically, them using the idea of the god of Mount Ibuki as, like, the Yamada no Orochi divided spirit thing, which is a little in, like, some of the backstory options for Shuten as a legend. But the fact that, like, they bring the Kusanagi back in the finale, yeah, that there aren't a lot of ways you could have did that, but it's still very much like, literally in the postscript, there is a comment by Shuten and you who are like, oh, I wish you could have interacted more with Ibuki, but oh well, right? Like,
right.
Maybe that's like a tap on the nose, a nod and a wink to the fact that maybe there was more text there planned, but they were like, oh shit, we're in COVID crunch times, we haven't had a major release in, like, 2/3 of the year.
It's like, that's probably why it's so short, honestly. They probably have to cut a lot more than they're letting on.
Yeah. Like, I think the product is very focused, and I think they must have made a decision probably pretty late in being like, no, we want to make sure we get this out before the year ends because we've got big stuff coming. We need to, like, pare this down and tighten this up right the fuck now. And they were not afraid to take the cut to it. And as a writer, you should not be afraid to do that editing ratchet. I do definitely feel like you can see the points where you're like, I feel like we compressed some stuff here,
If there was cut Tamamo content, I'm going to be very upset.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. That doesn't feel like a cut thing. That feels like a cameo nod. Like,
yeah.
That feels like we need to address that this is the time and the place when the thing happens,
Mm-hmm.
It would be like if we went to, I'm trying to think, what would be the like, other area equivalent? I guess it would be like if we went to, like, Greece in the middle of the Trojan War and, like, we never saw Achilles or Odysseus somehow, right? Like, even if they're not main characters, they're here. They should be doing the thing, you know? We should see them.
Oh man, I know we just did Olympus, but having a fucking Troy Lostbelt or event would be fucking sick.
Yeah, there's a lot there that we could get into, and there are a lot of characters from that time that might be fun to recontextualize sometime. Listenable, take notes.
Take notes, please.
But yeah, and I wrote this down in my notes. There were some staff statements on this later. They absolutely planned more for some of these characters. Like, there was supposed to be a whole extra caster we would actually see, and they were just like, yeah, for like dev time purposes, we don't have enough time to like make this a fully fleshed out like boss fight and playable character and shit. So we're gonna cut them. I don't know when that process was started, you know, because there's a lot of lead time on servants. It must have been fairly decently into the writing process where they were just like, oh, we're not going to get this done on time and on budget. We need to move some stuff around. The last third is very fast. I don't think any of it has problems, but there are definitely some characters who are abbreviated. The characters we do get, though, are pretty good. It's similar to, in this storyline with Tamamo, it's very similar to Seishonagon cameos. After the Babbage arc, she basically disappears, but it's still very much like, yeah, this is kind of sort of when she should be around. Thematically, it works, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
I'm pretty sure that the writing team had a fucking, team deathmatch over who they focused on between Murasaki Shikabu and, say, Shonagon.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm
We
assuming.
ended up with Murasaki as the focus. I think they did pick her because this is already established in her characterization and in the kind of the backstory for the Genji Monogatari that she would have known Abe no Seimei and actually, like, studied, you know, some of the supernatural stuff with him, and that works better for, you know, plot stuff. It loops back in. Seiya is great. I love her in this story.
It's actually interesting because she's supposed to be a lot older, and they keep harping on that.
Yes. Kintoki's like, whoa, hey, you're no... Oh, shoot, it's been so long since I read that chapter.
Spring Chicken. You're no Spring
No,
Chicken.
I'm talking about what's her... Yeah, the Spring Chicken line, but what's her alias now? Because she wants to punch us if we call her Sei Shonagon.
I can't remember.
I've managed to wrap my brain around the fact that we called, you know, Murasaki Shikabu Karoko a lot. You know, Fujiwara no Karoko. It was something like that. But, like, yeah, Kintoki has that line where, like, whoa, hey, you're no Spring Chicken anymore. And she's like, first of all, how dare you make a backwards assumption about my age? I'm gonna kick your ass.
Insert punk 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 noises here.
Yes. Also, you know, there's another point where she brings up, like, hey, don't be talking about how old I am. I've put a lot of effort into looking this young. You know, so they have an explanation for it. They explicitly use those extra Ascension sprites where they are very Japanese for both Murasaki and Sei, you know, which works out very well.
I'm glad they put the dramatic... Like, I know it's a little thing, but I'm glad they put the kimono dragging sound in there when they walked.
Yes. There were a lot of extra sound effects for them moving around with the drag and the, you know, the subtle door stuff. Because the robes are, you know, very big and long.
They had like seven layer robes or something. I can't remember. Like,
lots of layers.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of good character stuff in here, but there's also some abbreviated stuff. So to kind of beat by beat it, we run into, you know, Tsuna and Medea Lily right away. We have to run because this is a thing that's established in the prologue. Heian era Japan is still mystical, right? Mystery has not left this place yet. So there's literally Onis and demons and Tsuchigumos running around, earth spiders, that humans have to beat up. So, like, on his own, Watanabe no Suna is still a big deal. He is a, you know, mythic Oni-killing swordsman. But also he's backed up by Medea's magecraft, which is, you know, pretty baller. And again, to kind of show his early character issues, where like we get that he's really, really focused on this job, this work, to the respect that like it gets a little chaotic because, you know, even Kintoki calls him out on this really early, like, hey, brother Suna, aren't we supposed to be looking out for women and kids? You know, what's going on here? But Suna has a very classic, you know, funny misunderstanding where Medea is like, yes, this is one person and one servant, and does not specify the class because that doesn't come up. And only later does Suna realize, wait, hold on. The ninja lady is the servant, and you, the person casting spells, are a human.
The foreign-looking person casting spell, mind you.
Yes. Which is interesting, because I believe that line happens no matter what gender you are. The main character is canonically from Japan. You are dressed in one of your mystic codes, and I don't know canonically if we actually own any of our mystic codes that look like traditional Japanese clothing.
Well,
So
I'm pretty sure there's a scene where you actually flash over. You get, like, I think it's when Murasaki is peeking on you. You do actually appear, and I do believe... For me, I was in the Arctic Warfare Mystic Code.
Yes, that would make sense. You should be in the because we haven't gotten the brand new one yet, so you're in the Lostbelt classic one. So, yeah, that would definitely look like foreign clothes, because that's your current up-to-date combat mystic code. So, then Suna is like, okay, I've made a misunderstanding. I'm going to go. But also, Kintoki, I don't like how you're fighting with me. I'm going to make you show me your hand next time we meet. Bye. Very classic samurai shit. I appreciate it. Suna doesn't even realize, and several of the characters don't even realize that servants come in classes, heroic spirits come in classes other than caster. Even Kintoki has to, like, run this over a couple of times. This is also where we get introduced to my favorite joke, my favorite recurring gag in this, where Kintoki remains convinced that you are his servant, you are his caster.
Listen, by the end of this, I'm convinced as well, okay?
I mean, thematically, it's true. Even if Abe no Seimei is like, no, you weren't actually his, no, don't do that. This is dumb. Seimei's letters are like, your servant is not Doman, your servant wasn't your master.
Nah, I have a fucking theory. I have a fan theory.
Go for it.
We're in a singularity. Note, we didn't get a single support servant from the throne. But do you know what did happen? One dude, for some inexplicable reason, got command seals. No one knows why.
Yeah.
But because of those command seals, he might have made some decisions, made some actions.
Yeah. He was involved in the Grail War, even though he didn't have a servant. And so it definitely, like, it could be a counterforce thing. It could just be an extra weird thing. We do know that there were extra command spells floating around. When Limbo appears, he has a line about using his... I think he talks about he had the 10 command spells as the administrator of the Holy Grail War.
Well, yeah,
so
that's what...
He basically put himself in the ruler slot, kind of.
Well, there's always an administrator. It's like how Kiryu is the administrator in...
Yeah, right.
And then he has all the extra ones. I think they're all on his arms, though.
Oh, yeah. That shows up in Zero as well. Yes, there are extra command seals, and when you give up your command spells, if you want to, like, forfeit, you give them to the administrator. Yeah, so as the admin, he had the extra seals, so we know that there's some floating around. I kind of like how in the story there's no real explanation. Like, even at the end, again, spoilers for the ending, but Kintoki is still like, I'm still wondering where the fuck my servant was. I could have sworn it was you, but it's not. And I thought maybe it was Limbo, because he was the extra, but it's not. So what the fuck is going on?
Well, he's like that, but he makes his peace with it, because he just decides, like, even if you weren't my servant, you were my servant.
Yes. You were my boss.
God, I love how he just starts calling you boss halfway through. I'm all like, oh, so golden.
Yeah. And that's the other funny thing. You introduced this Kintoki to Golden.
And Morphing Hero.
Yes, and he's just like,
this is
Golden.
amazing.
This is good.
No, this is golden.
Yes.
You're just all like...
And you're like, now you're getting it. And again, shout out to Kintoki. Like, he runs into two people on the street. One who is, a quote-unquote a kid, I do like that they actually start having the dialogue where, like, at one point, like, later Shuten offers you a drink, and your option can be, like, either no thanks or, like, I think I'm still a minor, depending on how you count time. So, like, we're starting to play a little with the age gap, but in terms of, like, maturity for our time, the player character definitely started out as a kid, right?
Yeah.
And you still have not been hardened by your time, even though ostensibly some of these characters at different ages would have been, taking on these big positions as warriors or courtiers at an even younger age than you, but it's all about, relative maturity. And Danzo is obviously, a lady, even though she's a very deadly lady. And Kintoki, who says that we find out later he's run away from home.
Yep.
He's fled the Genji residence where Raiko was in. I don't think it was ever explicitly stated that it was because he got his seals, but, like, when he's introducing the concept, it sounds just like he got fed up with Raiko's Raiko-ness and had to go.
Listen, you can only take so much Ara before you're like, nope.
He had to roll out. And, like, he implies that he's just been drunk all day in an alley, but he's like, you're running from something. Don't worry about it. Just tell me you need some help. I'm your man. I'm your guy. But also, if you don't need my help, tell me that too. I'll leave you alone. Like, damn. Raiko got Kintoki drinking his respect women and children juice. But yeah, we actually clear up the thing with Suna in a clever way that I liked, where the protagonist actually thinks, and is like, hey, I know to solve this. Danzo, go to spirit form. And then Suna's like, wait. What? And then Medea's like, oh, my bad. I didn't clarify. I'm sorry. I knew that one was the servant. You just didn't ask. He's like, talk to you later. Then we run into Sei Shonagon in a carriage, and this is a very interesting bit of dialogue, because, like, it's not super thematically important, but we do actually get into a little bit of, like, a lot of the courtesy and courtly attitudes the Heian period required, right?
Oh yeah.
So, like, Sei straight up says, yeah, there's no way I can take 2 weird guests, or 3 weird guests, in the middle of the night. I'm retired. I shouldn't be doing this shit. Especially when, X number of them is a dude. X because, again, the player character's gender is not fixed, but still. She's still like, yeah, that would be weird. I'm supposed to be retired. I shouldn't be having weird guests in the middle of the night. I know what you can do. I'm going to drop you off at a house. You tell them that, you were sent by this person. They'll understand what's up. And that house turns out to be, Fujiwara no Karuko, Lady, Murasaki Shikabu. You give her the secret password. And I do like their interpretation. This is something we talked about both in Let's Talks and also I brought this up in some of the Wanted stuff we've done. There is no actual guarantee that Sei Shonagon and Murasaki Shikabu actually spoke to each other like face to face, right?
No, they mostly knew each other through reputation in their works.
They were both known because they were artists and courtiers assigned to different important imperial women in the emperor's household, but they were in different circles, so there's no actual guarantee that they actually interacted face to face. And so this is kind of that characterization where they know of each other, and obviously, they've read each other's works. And, Sei even says she's a huge fan of the Tale of Genji, which is still mid-writing at this point.
Yes.
Coming out basically episodically. But they know about each other, and, there's some rivalry there, but also a lot of mutual respect. Like,
Murasaki.
Yeah. Murasaki seems almost, intimidated when you drop a line that implies that, say, Shonagon sent you. But also she's like, well, of course I must honor our, we're in the secret book club handshake, so I have to let you stay in my house. So yeah, we get to jam out with Kaoruko a lot.
House surfing at fucking Murasaki Shikabu's house.
Yeah.
Put that on a fucking resume.
Yeah. And it's a pretty good couch surf too. Like her servants and herself are really generous to us. We eat lots of food. We get fed well with proper rice. We get our own room. She was even going to prepare extra rooms, but you're like, nah, it's fine. I don't care again that there are there is a non-evenly spaced number of genders here. It's fine. I don't care. Yo, Kintoki, do you care? Nah, whatever. We're in the middle of the night. Yeah, there was at least one point where Kintoki is like, Miss Danzo, you're dressed like an anime ninja. There's a lot of stuff I can see. Please don't get up in my face. I don't know nothing about that.
I think that's interesting now that you think about it, because I think most other people do treat Danzo just like she's kind of a puppet.
Yeah.
They really don't pay her any mind.
And some of that may have to do with seeing her in action, I think Kintoki doesn't bring that up later, after she's popped off and popped back on an arm,
Yeah.
And several times she yells out Fuma missile, so I'm sure she does her Macross missile barrage,
Hell yeah.
So, once you start to see some of that shit, you're probably like, okay, you are clearly not you talk like a person, you act like a person, so I'm not going to be, racist or anything, but also, you are clearly mechanical, so I'm also not going to make my assumptions about you being humanoid either. But anyway, thanks to getting in contact with Karuko, we get to hatch our first plan to stop Limbo, because we know Limbo is responsible, even if he hasn't shown his face. Because this is where we have that conversation with Chaldea we alluded to earlier. So, Da Vinci and Holmes fill you in on a lot of stuff. Mash and Fuma Kotaro apologize a lot, but you're like, nah, it's really fine. Literal plot barriers, guys. Nothing you could do. But we concoct our first plan, which is we learn all the stuff about the Grail War and the setup. Abe no Seimei is not here, but he left a letter describing this ritual, and even Kintoki is like, yeah, that's sus. I, Kintoki, know nothing about lying, and I'm not good at the ways of the world. That's sus.
Kintoki is very simple.
Yes.
At this point in his life.
Yeah. He's picking up some stuff. He's no longer, a literal wild mountain child either, but he is still kind of a backcountry boy. They even do this very well with his dialogue. It's a lot rougher, lots of contractions and stuff. And then there's a great shift in a scene we're going to talk about in a second, where he actually gets very formal. And I shout out to the translators and localizers. You did a great job doing that switch in dialogue without even the normal way that Japanese does that, with just different word levels. But yeah, so we figure our first best plan is we need to go to the palace and we need to eyeball Ashio Doman. Doman is second in charge of the Onmyoji Bureau, which was real, by the way.
Oh yeah, no,
they took the court astrologer position and lots of stuff very seriously. Obviously, Abe no Seimei was probably heavily fictionalized afterward, but no, he was a real guy who probably held that position.
Well, that's the thing. Back in the Heian period, with all the noble factions fighting and stuff, a lot of people were afraid of people being cursed or having grudges, spirits, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, it was a common thing to have Onmyoji come over and, place wards, do purifications, exorcisms, all that crazy stuff. So,
and of course, they also, in a practical sense, because again, the Heian was when we were at a lot of height of cribbing Chinese high culture as well. They also did a lot of stuff with divination, astrology, geomancy, and stuff like that. Organizing your space and picking times of things that would be auspicious and well favored and stuff like that.
Yes.
So,
also true.
Yeah, so there was plenty of both of those functions going around. So, yeah, we know that Ashia Doman is there, and we managed to get across to Kintoki pretty well that we're after this guy called Limbo, who, like, is Ashia Doman, but is not Doman. So, the Doman we meet in the Imperial residence, the palace, might be him, but he might not, so we should go check. I'm not really sure what our plan was. If it was him, were we gonna, like, punch him right in the Imperial Palace? I don't know, but, it was a lead.
No, I think they were going to fall back and then make a plan to go punch him.
Yeah, we were gonna figure it out. Or possibly we were just gonna, like, use the excuse of appearing before him before his plan is complete and make him, like, start monologuing. I don't know. Limbo does kind of feel like he'd fall for that.
Well, we couldn't expose him and fight him because you'd be then fighting in the Imperial Palace, which, as Omega's probably going to get to, is also kind of a pain to get to, so...
Yeah, we are literally only allowed when it is the off hours, like it's early in the morning when nobody is there, there's no, like, official assemblies or government functions or, like, open court being held for things to be, like, brought before the Emperor and his heirs and whatnot. We are explicitly told that the Emperor and his, primary wife are going to be in a different part of the palace while we're there, and that ideally we will also not run into the Emperor's father-in-law and the Minister of the Left. We won't run into Michinaga. We do end up running into it anyway because it's more dramatic that way, but the plan was not to do that. And we're just going to look for Ashia Doman and try to bump into him. They do bring up a couple of times that it's very interesting that at night, the streets are awash in bad guys. Not just Tsuchigumo, but also, Oni sometimes slip through the barrier, stuff like that. And there's a lot of, evil spirits and grudges around, which we see represented as certain Shimosa-type enemies, the Black Samurai and the Ghosty Boys. So we get to the palace, we're looking around, we talk to some people. We do actually meet that Ashia Doman, and he seems nice, functional, normal. I mean, he still looks like a freak show, but, like, he's not like, yes, let me suck out your entrails. He's like, oh, hello, visitor. You've got some grudges around you. Let me fix that for you real quick. And he, dispels the bad juju around you. So it's fairly obvious with you yourself there and with Donzo there that you're like, okay, that's not Limbo, as it were. That is regular-ass Ashia Doman. He seems okay. At the very least, he's not directly involved in this scheme. He kind of is, but kind of isn't still. It's a little bit of complexity when we get to the reveals later. But we do run into Michinaga, and like I said, there's some very interesting stuff here where, like, Kintoki completely changes up his way of speaking to be more formal and, talks about the Minister of the Left and is like, sir, I believe that the Imperial Grail War is an evil plot. And shout out to Michinaga. He's kind of a Weasley-faced little guy, but he's also very pragmatic, right?
Well, that's what I think makes him Weasley. He hedges his bets.
Yes. He is a proper politico where he's like, well, 1,000 Years of Peace does sound pretty cool, but it would suck if we were sucked up by an evil villain's plot. And you are Sakata Kintoki, one of our elite Genji warriors. And you can't lie for shit. So...
Excuse me.
All right, just give me some proof. Right now, you're just saying shit. I can't take you at your word. I can't do that. You got to find me some objective proof or otherwise, get the Genji faction, get your warriors on board this so we can call it off, because yeah, it's a whole thing. So, that gives us kind of our next setup for figuring stuff out. We got to locate other masters and see if we can get them to call it off. Because it is pretty clear, again, we bring this up in the dialogue. No Holy Grail is explicitly called out. Nothing is explained how the winner is going to collect their wish. So I think the Master and Donzo pretty easily figure it out, like, oh, this is a Grail War setup. Doman's got a big net. He's just catching all the extra heroic spirit juice that comes out. So if we get to 6 or 7, that's bad. That's when the bad thing happens. What is the bad thing? We don't fucking know, but it's bad.
He's not here for love and peace.
No. Like, that, again, that's the beautiful thing about Doman being such a classic, like, unrepentant villain in that sense. You just know that his plan is bad. Like, we don't really need to question, like, how it's bad. We know that it's going to be bad if he gets his way.
Yeah.
So, we'll stop him. Suna appears again, we have a little bit of tension, but again, like we brought up with the Imperial Palace, that is so hard to get into and stuff. There's also no fighting there. You're not supposed to fight. I think the only reason why some of the characters had weapons was just because they're stuck to their story sprites, so we can't edit them out, So we once again get a reprieve from our showdown, and we move into after all that setup, we move into the Babbage arc. We talked about that earlier. The key thing here is that Karuko was one of the masters. She is actively another master. We also they aren't explicit that it's her diary right away, but you can quickly pick up a lot of chapters in this section are introduced, and a couple of later ones are introduced
as a diary entry.
Yeah, explaining like the steel monster, Kintoki's appearance and stuff like that. Some other elements, later when Shuten makes her appearance on the scene, Oni slipping through the barrier that Abe no Seme put up, stuff like that. Very
I
neat
mean,
detail. Like it.
I loved it, especially when it ended. Like most of the time it was just a certain diary, and at the end it's like it says Murasaki Shikabu's secret diary, and it's all like, yes,
Yeah.
that's a good shit.
Yeah, that's a real fun nod to, like, again, real life stuff, but also keeping us in tone to all the things.
Well, yeah, because again, like Murasaki Shikabu is known for a few great things, but the biggest two is one, the Tale of Genji, and two, the Diaries of Murasaki Shikabu, which is our big window into Heian court life. So the fact that they doubled down on the diary, well, not necessarily doubled down, but they used the diary as a narrative device. I think was neat.
It was a recurring framing device that really worked for our setup.
Mhm.
But yeah, so there's a whole thing. We meet Babbage. We are forced to fight Babbage, and I think this is where we really start to see that a lot of that production value stuff I was talking about. Like, obviously, we didn't talk about it all, but when you first opened your game after this Lostbelt came out, it fucking appears in an animation on your main screen. Yeah.
When you're just like, whoa.
It was so powerful it crashed my phone the first time.
Really?
Yeah, no, the animation started to play and my phone froze and I had to reset. It was okay the second time. It was a little too much juice after the update. But yeah, no, so there's like the, and then it happens in reverse when the story is over, and they inform you, hey, if you want to get your free quests, go to main interlude.
I also like that after it does that, the next Lostbelt title becomes clear, and you're just like, oh.
Yes, and you're like, I see. Yeah, really good stuff. But we go through the confrontation, we run into the Helter Skelters. It should be pretty obvious to anybody who's been following FGO story that you're like, Helter Skelters are here, Babbage is here. We know what's up. And, there's a lot of really good dialogue building and stuff. We figured out what Karuko's wish was. She wants to just find a really good ending for her story because she's having writer's block issues, because she is writing one of the seminal pieces of historical Japanese prose, and the people around her are kind of treating it that way. Like, everybody we run into who meets her is like, listen, love your stories, but, like, even Michinaga is like, hey, listen, love your work, but if, there's rules in the Imperial Palace, y'all. So she's got a little bit of the writer's block. She's got that 80% problem we talked about. But she has a really good, bouncing off of Babbage in his kind of, special way. We do get some extra great Babbage dialogue. Talk about his weird club, and he's like, it's a hammer.
Like I said, I love, honestly, I think the Babbage arc is still one of my favorites, because this is when Kintoki really starts asking him what he wants in life, because, he looked upon Babbage, a foreign mage, and, heard about his dreams and his ideals, and Kintoki's just like, what the fuck do I want?
And Babbage even challenges him, because, like, after we win the first fight, we try to have a conversation because we're like, buddy, we don't actually want to fight because we need to stop this war. So if we actually start killing casters, that's bad. We want to make sure we keep a couple alive, at least. So we're trying to, solidify allies and break the system and stuff. But Suna shows up, so we're like, shit. We're pretty sure we can't beat him right now, and Babbage can't summon up enough force to really get him. Though he can give him a run for his money by activating his reality marble on the ley line, So he challenges Kintoki, and again, we get kind of a return of the deathmatch intros. It's not quite the same, but it is similar. I love the fucking shadow shots on the face, though.
Yeah, no, that was about to mention. That's the good shit.
Yeah. Like, we get extra animations. There's a lot of... I find it kind of interesting that none of the caster servants summoned seem to question the weird dialogue lines they've been fed. Oh gods laugh, oh sun shine. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. Hold the phone. But yeah, we have another deathmatch.
Sure, it's the spell to summon the deathmatch arena.
Yeah. Which is returning, and we immediately realize it, right? We're like, oh shit, we're here. This is definitely Limbo's work. So you get your showdown with Babbage. And again, this is a recurring thing they do, but like, Kintoki, they talk about and mention it later, Kintoki is the child of a god and a mountain witch, so he's not quite human, but he explicitly has his lightning powers even as a mortal man. So they do this thing with his lightning bolts a lot, which is really good. It's a really good effect they do. So you beat Babbage, and he has the speech you alluded to earlier about clad your ideals in steel. It's a great speech. Like, I won't try to go over it. You either know it or you haven't got there yet, and you need to read it. But it does that thing you talk about. It really starts Kintoki on his character arc of like trying to figure out what his deal is. Because I'll say this, kind of the impression I always got, the reason why he never summoned a servant was because he didn't have a wish. Like, he had the qualification for a master by being a powerful warrior, but he didn't have something to wish on the Grail for, so he had no reason to summon for the servant.
You mentioned that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting that neither you or he seems to explicitly bring this up in the story, but he kind of is thinking in those lines. A lot of this dialogue he has with himself where he's like, what am I missing? What's going on? The thing that is missing is that he does not have, like, a wish. He's just the guy. He's just doing stuff. It's not until the very, very end where he's like, nope, I've got it. I've got my thing. I know what I'm about. Once again, by the way, if you haven't actually listened to the song Golden Path, it is literally all about this. It was made, I believe, from the bottom up to be about Lostbelt 5.5, and it is on point. It is the thing, the themes, encapsulated musically. It's good. Go listen to it. It's also, like, the lyrics are all in English, so you can figure it out. But yeah, so Babbage has this great speech that kind of, like, really motivates you and Kintoki to be like, okay, we got shit to do. All right. And then our next thing is, like, because Kintoki's mentioned that Raiko's kind of, like, holed up and stuff, hasn't come out really. I think this is the part of the story where, like, he may have mentioned it before, but this is the part of the story where he starts seriously being like, yeah, she's probably a master then. And you even get some insert shots. I think they do a really good, I don't want to quite call it a fake out, but they do kind of enough of a mystery here, because Raiko is shown with a mysterious Japanese child. And while I was pretty sure who this character was from her introduction, it was still just not explicit enough that I was kind of like, okay, I'm getting some weird vibes here.
I don't know. As soon as they said Humpty Dumpty, I was all like,
Yeah. No, let's like I said, when I got there, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is this character. But also, again, the some very interesting interactions and vibes. But yes, with talking with Raiko, they give a speech about Humpty Dumpty, and you're kind of like, huh, there's no reason for this small Japanese child to understand that. So, oops, it was rhyme. But yeah, so our next bet is to go to Raiko directly, and Kintoki has to struggle with this one. I think he even pitches it as, well, we'll go to Abe no Seime's mansion first to see if he's home or see if he left anything, and then he's like, actually...
Wait, no, we skipped the part. We skipped the Oni arriving.
Does it actually happen? I think their first attack happens first, right?
Yeah, because they wander around Heian-kyo, and then I forgot her name. Kato Danzo maps out their path, and then it all intersects at
Seime's address, which is also Raiko's address. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that happened a little bit later, but no, you're right. We're introduced to the Oni attacking. There's a lot of fun world building with like the barrier here. That's why they have to be small. They can't, jump in right away. Something has made them a little more powerful, so Ibaraki comes out, full force with a big Oni with her. Thanks to, it's spelled out later, thanks to Shuten's servant, because Shuten was selected as a master, even though she is an Oni.
Power.
Yeah. Well, she's the boss of the Onis, the king of Mount Oe, so it makes sense. But yeah, so we get a confrontation with them first, which is very interesting. This came a thing we talked a little bit about, I think it was off mic. The Oni from Mount Oe are set up very interestingly. Like, there's a very weird scene that just lets you know how Shuten and Ibaraki's relationship is slightly fucked up. Where, like, Ibaraki really enjoys causing chaos, really loves involve smashing things and stuff. But at a point, throwing guys around, but at a point, Shuten is like, hey, Ibaraki, I loaned you my lieutenant and my buddy, and I let you in even though you used up your month's thing. But I got a rule. Everything you kill, you have to eat. And Ibaraki's like, that's okay, Shuten, I haven't killed anybody yet. Please don't make me eat people. So, it's an interesting bit of characterization. The kind of impression you get, because it's not to say that, like, Shuten's not afraid to kill a fool, or even, God forbid, they definitely play up just how, fickle and chaotic Shuten is as an Oni.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ibaraki is and continues to just be a little gremlin. Like,
Precious banana.
I don't think her characterization really changes in this. It's like, she's here to, cause a fight and have people go, no, Ibaraki, you're so strong and cool. And, like, she mostly gets annoyed when people don't take her seriously. Like, that's when she gets really mad at Suna in the opening when, like, he's just, like, blowing her off and she's just like, how dare you? Fuck you. Like, she just causes chaos and doesn't really care how it happens or why. And whenever it comes to, like, doing real evil, she's not really there for that. Like, she's not really sadistic or anything. She's just a troublemaker, a delinquent. Shuten is very sinister in a lot of her scenes. Not just in this, but in other places. Everybody should remember Shimosa, where she decided to, double-check our entrails for us.
I mean, it helped us, somehow.
Kind of. But it was also very uncomfortable and gross.
I mean, honestly, if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure Shuten is trying not to kill people, because once she starts killing and eating, like, the relationship that she has with Kintoki can't be the same anymore. I mean, they literally mentioned this in the epilogue when they do the, basically the postscript, about how eventually they did start eating people, and guess what? Fucking Raiko and her 4 Heavenly Kings had to mount up and take them out.
Yeah. I do also like in the postscript, they're like, and there's several versions of how this went down. Take your pick. But yeah, it's definitely the implication, whether it's her relationship with Kintoki personally, or just the general vibes of, like, once she stops just stealing shit and kidnapping people for fun, I do also appreciate that at least in this translate, like, they don't make any shy that, like, even though our two primary Oni bosses are very clearly, at least visually, chicks, they do, steal pretty ladies just because it's fun, I guess, or because, humans care about it, but...
Well, they want pretty girls to serve them wine and stuff, you know.
Like,
if I remember correctly, I believe they do say they took boys, too.
I think, it's mentioned a couple of times, but in general, like I said, that is part of the Shuten Doji and the Mount Oe myth that, like, I feel like Fate didn't go super deep in on because they weren't, maybe they weren't sure if they could, go for that, but this time they're just like, nah, fuck it, they're Oni, they're doing villain shit. They kidnap maidens and steal your livestock and your jewels and stuff,
Yeah, because when they would kidnap someone, Kintoki would always come running to save them.
Yeah. So, Shuten gets to enjoy this kind of play acting they do, and she has very strict rules to make sure it flows. That's why she has this conversation with Ibaraki, which is like, hey, Ibaraki, you fucked up. I'm giving you a second chance because I'm running my own game here. If you're gonna be out here causing a ruckus, I'm gonna make you follow through, And Ibaraki's like, okay, I don't want to follow through. I don't want to eat humans. They're gross, and they're not good for you. And, yeah. And then the implication in the postscript is just... for whatever reason, whether it was entirely because of Kintoki, personally, like kind of him finding his field as a hero or, other stuff going on, eventually Shuten takes off the kid gloves and it gets real enough that, like, Abe no Seimei is like, yep, gotta go take care of that. It's gonna be a problem. Gotta do a thing. Oh, that does remind me, we skipped Tamo's first cameo as well because we were talking about the Imperial Palace. We do bump into her there, mysteriously.
And you see straight through her and she's also like, I see. Do we perhaps have some fate? And you're just like, and she's like, I knew it.
Yeah, she's like, have we met before? And you're kind of like, we haven't met before, but... And she's like, yes, I see. And, she pulls you aside for a quiet conversation, which is basically just like, you can see, right? And you're like, yeah. And you're like, all right, I'm not here to fuck with you. You don't fuck with me? And you're like, yeah. And we're like, okay. Smart on the master, by the way, not to try and pull that trigger. And I know some people have kind of lamented that Tamo doesn't get more focus in this. I'm kind of glad she didn't, because I feel like in a chapter like Heian-kyo, the focus she would get would be like Ibuki to be like an extra boss. Like, Limbo would pull the Tamamo no Mae trigger early, and that would be a problem. But it's not that. It's just very casual. And then she's just like, well, that was weird. Anyway, go about my business. Should I bust out some tails and some fangs? Nah, that weird kid's got it. I'm cool. But yeah, so... the Oni rampage around, we boop Ibaraki's snoot, and, you have some setups with her that you actually, set up about, her and Kintoki's kind of frenemies relationship, and Kintoki's kind of like, I don't really remember any of that shit, I just know that you're here fucking around and you can't be doing that. But also, I understand that, like, you're just fucking around, But we do get introduced to Shuten's servant, it's Paracelsus. He uses elemental bullshit to get around. I do also want to say, I appreciate both as an allied servant later, and as an enemy, Shuten can't use her NP because she doesn't have it yet.
Yeah, no, she didn't drink the fucking wine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great touch, personally.
Yeah, like, it's a little annoying to use her as a support there, though they do at least make sure to give her a passive so that all of her, like, default attacks inflict poison even as a support character, which is cool. Yeah. You still get your mileage out of it a little bit. But yeah, no, it's a great touch to be like, well, yeah, of course she can't actually, properly do that because she hasn't ingested the wine yet. She does have some sacred wine that she can use for certain attacks later, but it's not her Sanpaku Kido yet. It's not the thing because she hasn't drank that yet.
Yeah, no, they actually mentioned that usually the first thing Shuten does when she breaks into the capital is go steal the really good wine.
Yeah. Well, and they even explicitly mention, like, when Kintoki's explaining her name, it's she is the drunk one. But he's like, but she's not actually that drunk if you pay attention. Again, that fits a lot of Shuten's characterization in this story and in general in Fate, where she's basically like, everybody knows the memes about the drunken fist style, you do a lot of erratic movements because you pretend to be drunk all the time. Shuten is the drunken fist master at everything, not just fighting. Like, she uses drunken fist in social and everything. It just,
He really wants her eyeballs, though.
Yeah. She's like, oh, your eyeballs are so pretty. What if I gouge them out for you? Or sometimes she's like, oh, you look like you've seen some shit. What if I pluck your eyes out for you? It's like, no, stop it.
Stop that.
I also I love this fucking conversation when it happens later, where, like, Shuten's like, oh, you're so cool, so sweet. I wish I could just take a bite. Can I take a bite? And Kintoki's like, fuck no, dumbass, you can't take a bite. Who would ask for that? And Shuten's like, you'd be shocked. And I'm like, yes, I've been on the internet.
No, like, honestly, like, I really do love the interaction between Shuten and Kintoki, and the interaction between Shuten and the Master, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, Shuten is, like, into you for some odd reason that she can't even explain. But
There's definitely a lot of vibes I like where, even though these are the real-life living versions of these characters, obviously we've canonically met them all. You get to even shout out about Onigashima, right?
Yeah.
Like, we know all these people, and we're very familiar with them. We work with them closely, and, have encountered them over several events and stuff. And so, it's a cool thing that can happen with time travel stories like this, and this is a really interesting way for them to do this as a, like, later Lostbelt, after all these characters have been introduced, that we can be like, yeah, I know you, I understand what your deal is, we're pretty close. And the other characters are just like, yeah, I feel like you get me, man. Kintoki's
Well,
like, I feel like we got a thing, boss. You're the boss.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, if you already know somebody, you already know, like, their tales and actions, how to be around them, and people just automatically put at ease.
Yeah. And that also, because the Throne of Heroes operates outside of time, I think does mean that there's a little bit of, like, the fated connection stuff where, like, oh, I feel like I know you. And you gotta be careful. To some people, anyway. With Kintoki, we just tell him the whole shit, and he's just like, cool, neato. That doesn't change his life any, that he knows about, other weird stuff about the future and whatnot. But yeah, so we have our interaction with Shuten the first time, we scare her off, but then Kato Danda does the thing you talked about, where she tracked all the Oni, and figured it out. And that's when it's Doman's house, but then Kintoki is like, yeah, Doman does live right over there, but actually it's Raiko's house, which is this house. And we need to talk to Raiko anyway, so... And then Kintoki, I think, just spends, like, literally 10 minutes just staring at the front door, unable to open it. And then that kid pops out, and you're like, oh. He's like, oh, what the fuck? Where's the weird kid? And she's like, yo, come home. And he's like, okay. Kid, you shouldn't be in the street. And talk about characterization. I also really like how they handle Raiko in this story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, obviously, especially coming right off the back of Imaginary Scramble with Summer Raiko as a character, I feel like they could have been kind of complacent or gaggy with it. No, they actually, like, try and treat her fairly seriously and appropriately. When you first meet her, she's definitely, like, this is the mode for the alleged, like, saber tier, like, Raiko we're looking for, right? Like,
that ice cold, stare you down personality.
Yes, the perfect warrior type thing. Like, Donzo's talking about, like, whoa, the room feels like it's cold, Kintoki, like, physically puts himself between you and Raiko to explain, and, she's very direct, very clear, and very, very ominous. Right up until you like, Kintoki manages to break through by just calling her mother, and she's just like, oh, it's my precious little boy. You made friends! That's adorable!
It's like, this is the first time you brought friends over! We must feast! And you're just all like, yeah, no, this is the Raiko I know.
Yeah, okay, well, time to eat a shitload of food. She feeds you for the whole rest of the day. Like, I think it's morning when you arrive. Kintoki spent an unknown number of times staring at the door, and then it hard cuts to night. And even though, like, a lot of her, like, mothering aspects, do stick with her, there is a fair amount of, like, actual characterization. I'm sure we'll all be doing Genji Advance memes for a while. It keeps coming up.
I mean, in here, she's actually is the leader of the Genji.
Yes. She is.
She is a authority figure and a force of influence in the capital.
Yeah. And they definitely play that up. While they're all off screen, there are lots of Genji warriors mentioned as you're walking around her estate. You're like, wow, there's a lot of armed dudes ready for action in here, Mm-hmm. And you can just imagine them in, like, the Kabuki play version of this. It's just all the spear carriers in the background just standing there being like,
Also, we have to remember this is a pre-Mount Oe, which in the epilogue they talk about, like, the whole lead up to that kind of changed Raiko, not in a good way.
Yeah, that was where some of her characterization from Onigashima, like calling Oni insects and stuff, comes from. It's not explicit exactly what it was, whether it was, like, the fact that she could only win by, like, drugging her enemy stupid, or was it, like, the fact that she could clearly see that, like, Kintoki and Shuten had a really close relationship that was weird and complicated, but, like, characterization-wise, Shuten's definitely playing, like, that, weird, pseudo-older sister, but also, like, that girl who babysat you, who maybe you had a crush on kind of vibes to Kintoki. Like, She is older than him. She's known him from when he was very young, and obviously when he was, on the mountain, he was just a wild mountain man kid. His dad was a dragon, his mom was a mountain witch, so, like, he was not civilized until he came down from the mountain to be adopted by the Genji. And like, there's definitely some of that stuff that, like, Raiko as kind of, this mentor and adoptive mother figure, and, his leader, his liege lord in a sense, doesn't really get in that relationship. You like, and definitely even when Kintoki switches to calling Raiko mother, right? It's still not, he's still not perfectly relaxed, She's his boss and his boss mom, his mom boss. And so it's not the same. So it could just be like that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Mount Oe is really fucked up. I don't know.
Like, I kind of feel like that Fade to Black where they just explain everything is also probably something that got condensed and broken down.
Yeah, I could almost see that maybe, like, being like some of the earlier scenes where we did get some of that detail, where they could have expanded it. But making it kind of text-based summaries also works.
It got the point across.
Yeah, it got the point across. And I like I said, I liked the approach, at least, them explicitly pitching, like, maybe this happened. But also, in some versions, this happens. You know, whichever one is kind of interesting enough. Again, this comes up with Ibaraki, you know, where in Legends, she actually, like, lives through the Mount Oe raid and comes back, like, twice to trouble Suna in different disguises. And then probably, you know, I'm pretty sure after the arm just fucks off, you know, gives it up. It's very interesting.
Ibaraki was very good at running away.
Yeah. Well, she has a very high level of disengage.
Yep.
She's good at the skedaddling. But it turns out, like, obviously during this conversation, we run into that other character and we're like, yo, this small child, that's a servant. And I'm pretty sure this is where it's explicitly dropped that it's rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's pretty important. But then there's also like, hey, there's some weird vibes outside. Oh, fuck, Oni. Because, yeah, Shuten was tailing you. You know, they were randomly teleporting around because I do like that Paracelsus talks about this earlier when he does their kind of ancient transmission escape. He's like, well, if we add, you know, I don't remember which one it was, whether it was Torakuma or Hoshikuma. But if we add the big Oni along with Ibaraki to our mass, I can't guarantee where we'll come out. It'll just be somewhere like several hundred yards from here. And Shuten's like, sounds fun, let's go. But yeah, you're followed around. Kintoki gets lured outside by Shuten to have a 1v1, a big bonk up. You know, Suna shows up at the last minute to be like, hey, what you doing? You know, there's some Onis following you, right? And Kintoki's like, what? Again, this is one of those things that might be an issue of some time compression. They basically spell out later that, you know, they kind of tricked Ibaraki, like, they set her up to actually, like, attack Raiko while she's distracted because she's covering for Rhyme. And then Nursery Rhyme does the thing that all servants are supposed to do and, you know, jumps in and takes the bullet for the master. And this is not a good time for Ibaraki.
No.
You know, she ends up, you know, cutting the throat of what looks to be a kid, and she's just like, what?
I believe this is the scene in the CM where she's just staring at her bloody claws.
Yeah. No, this is actually, several of these moments are referenced in the CM, because this is where, obviously, like, Kintoki and Shuten having a fucking brawler outside, Ibaraki just looking at her hands going, like, what? And Raiko getting slightly lightning tickled.
Yep.
Because this was Shuten's plan. She set up to take out her servant, which took the form of a kid, because that's a thing that Raiko is really intense about. You know, she kind of, again, we get a lot of good character development for Raiko. She kind of talks about how, with Rhyme, about how, I get kind of the impression that, like, she wasn't really allowed to have that much of a normal childhood.
Oh, no, she definitely wasn't.
Yeah, you know, for various reasons. So, like, she really embraced a lot of childhood stories and legends, which is why she connects so well with Nursery Rhyme. And Rhyme even makes sure to constantly use Raiko's childhood name, you know? It's a big deal. And, you know, so she's really connected there. So she gets real nettled about Rhyme taking the bullet for her, and this was Shuten's plan. Shuten's plan is she figured out about Gozuteno, about Ushigozen, and is like, okay, I'm gonna have her go nuclear in downtown Heian-kyo, and we're gonna see what happens. That's way funnier than this Holy Grail War shit. So that turns into you have your death match versus Shuten and Paracelsus. Yeah, that's another. Yeah, somebody brought up the fake spoilers that, like, Ibuki was caused by, like, Raiko and Shuten fusing. I could kind of see where they were coming from. No, it's not. That's not what happens. Honestly, the fact that Ibuki kind of comes out of nowhere is, I think, part of the vibe. But we'll get there. But yeah, so you have your fight with Shuten and Paracelsus. I was not particularly annoyed by this fight, by the way. There's some. We'll get into the fights where I got a little tickled. I had to start spending some seals and stuff.
What fights were that for me? I can't remember. I had to spend a total of 2 Saint Quartz to complete this. I'm trying to remember which fights it was.
Believe same. And I popped seals on I used seals on the Medea Suna one that mattered. That was the first time I had to do a full reset. Because that fight is a little bullshit. The fact that Suna can get a damage cut big enough to neutralize his damage.
Yeah, no, because it's random, but if he gets, like, 1 damage cut, you're just doing 0 damage, and you're just like...
Yeah, unless you credit to an NP. And the heal, both of them heal 15k, even after Medea is gone, so... Yeah. That one was a little tough. Also, I thought that little Dragon Tooth Warrior shit wasn't going to be that annoying, but the fact that he drops you, like, 10% NP when he does a basic attack, that was actually that annoying. I think that might have cost me a reset. I used a lot of Castoria Gobur in parts of this, and I may have missed some invuls because of that.
Yeah, no, it was Suna and the big Ibuki Doji fight that got me.
Yeah, that was one.
Again, I'm gonna say this again. You don't go phase 1 having to deal with a bunch of invul, and then phase 2 go straight to 2 million fucking HP. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it was a little rough. I thought I was doing okay, but then when I got to that last bar, I had been abusing Super Orion crits, and then it was because he has Pierce, and then she was like, yes, I have 8 scales built up. I'm going to turn that into HP. I now have 2 million. I'm like, oh, no, I did not. The wiki did not properly state to me how this one worked. Oof. Now, with Super Orion, the 2 million wasn't too much of a problem, but I did have to reset, because I was fucking around basically for the first 2 bars, trying not to trigger the giant max HP gain, and then it happened anyway, and I'm like, rip.
No, they didn't do any Heian-kyo recap, did they? Did they? Because I would like to try the Ibuki fight again, and see if I can not make it bullshit.
Yeah, no, I think they're planning to move straight to 6, so no, there were no, maybe next year, when we're not doing Road to 7, we'll get those fights, but yeah, we have not done I don't think we've done a Heian-kyo recap.
God damn it.
But yeah, so you have the Shuten and Paracelsus fight. You go through the whole thing. And again, Kintoki's like slowly leveling himself up. He actually gets smart. He doesn't really want to land a killing blow on Shuten, but he, aims for Paracelsus instead, takes him out. Paracelsus continues to be a pretty solid boy. You even have that conversation where like, I've met you in a different manifestation. I know what your deal is. I know you, even though you're probably not 100% behind this plan to turn Raiko into a WMD, you would never betray your master. And he's like, yeah, you get me. Cool. And he, teleports Shuten away, having already teleported Ibaraki away after she had a little bit of a bad time. We do get to calm down Raiko. I do appreciate that you are canonically using a lot of your Mystic Code healing in this. Yeah, you do it a lot. Even though Danzo is like, I have a self-repair feature, you're like, well, too bad, getting healed anyway. So you heal Rhyme a lot to actually like make her stable. She manages to talk Raiko down, and she's like, well, it's time for me to go. And then she just doesn't. Even she's surprised by this. And, it's like, I thought it was done. I guess not. This, I don't know if this is like a cut thing or just they wanted to not kill Nursery Rhyme. Like, I'm not sure. Because later Medea describes it as a miracle, right? Like, yeah. She even explains the whole process soon of why she calls it a miracle, because it's like, makes no fucking sense. The idea is that maybe Kintoki's lightning, because he is, as Sakata Kintoki, he is also Kintaro, the golden boy, who is one of the legends encapsulated by Rhyme, kind of, even though they go out of their way to specify that normally Rhyme is mostly Western fairy tales and stories. Though obviously, thanks to cross-cultural contamination, some of those, legends do get kind of globalized. But even then, Medea's like, that still probably shouldn't have worked. So, again, I don't know if that was something they were actually going to expand on, or they were just like, no, this is a story about being a hero. We would feel bad if Rhyme died. We're just gonna make her alive again, and we're not gonna put too much on it, because there's definitely a lot of those hero vibes in this, and like, what does it mean to be a hero? What are your ideals, etc. And we do get to this. Our next thing is like, Raiko is like, okay, you are right in that this is probably bad news bears, but also we are told to do that. We got to do the thing. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna convene a Genji Council. You have your big meeting. Everybody talks about stuff, and Raiko ultimately comes to the very thematically appropriate conclusion: the only way to settle this when 2 parties are equally right, duel. You must fight. And this is where we actually get our final boss fight with Suna. Which, like I said, that was one of the resets I had to do, because it wasn't hard per se. They just really went out of their way to like make Suna RNG-ly tanky. Because he has an evade too, which I think is a whole turn evade. So like, it's a rough one. I do at least appreciate that like the game mechanics have advanced so far that like, as an enemy, Medea Lily firing her NP is like such a non-issue. Oh no, you healed 3k and cleared debuffs. What do I do?
Well, that's always the weird thing about like healing NPs, is that they're always based upon
player side HP, yeah.
Player side HP, which is very small. It's like when I'm getting my Tamamo heal off and I'm doing like 2k to whatever, I'm all like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
But like I look at the other, I look at the opposite side who are rocking several 100,000s worth of HP, and I'm just all like, that's just a drop in the bucket for you.
Yeah, her NP is so tiny compared to the per turn healing they do.
Yeah.
But obviously you do beat them, and Kintoki goes all out to actually stop Suna, makes him kneel, makes him drop to a knee dramatically. They kind of hash it out, and Suna realizes that he's in the wrong, right?
Right.
Which also means, by the way, Medea Lily lives.
Yay.
She goes all the way through the story. Nothing bad happens with her. It's actually kind of fun.
I mean, Medea Lily really sticks in a support role. Nothing is ever really explained about her.
Yeah.
About her goals or ideas. She's just a stalwart companion to Suna.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think they have a really good relationship, which I enjoy.
Yeah, I was gonna
Like-
say that. I really like their dynamic because soon as the cold stoic warrior, Medea is a powerful mage, but she's also he even brings this up. She's a princess, right? So
Yeah.
They have a very cool classical relationship where like Suna is technically in charge, but he respects Medea.
And I know they showed their backstory because when they're leaving, whatnot in the city, it's all like, talks about, Lord Jason and all that stuff. So
Yes. Yeah, so he obviously asked her like what her deal is, and she explained, who she is.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have a pretty good relationship, and we also don't have to fuck up. And then it's basically like, all right, we've called it off.
Yay.
And then this is where we fire it up a notch because we move firmly deep into the second or third act even here. Because basically, I do at least appreciate, I think Raiko sends a letter to Lord Michinaga to be like, yo, in a trap, call it off.
We done.
And Michinaga is like, well, okay. I mean, if the 3 remaining Genji warriors in this fight won't carry it out, it's off. And I can't bully them, so it's done. And then Doman is like, nope. Because I am not Doman. I was Limbo. Limbo was Doman.
He just,
Or was Doman
runs
Limbo?
over to his organ and slams on it.
Yes.
Because
And he's
that is
like,
something like Limbo would fucking do. I know he.
Yeah. He's like, you thought you got me, but you didn't. My backup plan. And this is where stuff definitely on a like macro scale lore starts to get interesting. So, Doman reveals that he is basically a high servant now,
Mhm.
He in fact mindfuckled himself. He basically
What's
told
he-
himself, hey, nobody's ever gonna like you like they like Abe no Sebe. And real life Ashito was like, oh no, you're right. Cry emoji.
What I found crazy is what Doman fused himself with as a high service. It was
Yeah. No,
It
this whole
was-
bit with like Doman's high servant stuff is rad. First of all, there's a really, really sick CG when he goes all, Onmyoji Dark God.
yeah, with the 8 gods and the
Yes.
eyes and all that crazy stuff.
The fucking red eyes in the zoom. But yeah. He fused himself with a couple of things.
I can't know the name off the top of my head, but it's the Aztecan god known as the Obsidian Butterfly is one, and the other one is Chernobog.
An evil spirit or god from Slavic mythology, one associated with darkness.
Same with the second one. I remember reading it because I saw the name. I'm like, I know that's Aztecan, but what the fuck is this? And then I read it, and I still wasn't completely sure on it. But I'm like, this is bad juju.
It's Papa
Aztecan-
level.
Yeah, there we go.
But he explains it a little bit, he also got an extra guy in there. He has Fujiwara no Akimitsu as well, who was a rival of Michinaga, who wanted Doman to curse the city, allegedly. But yeah, it's really interesting how, he turned himself into a high servant, so he very explicitly, got to pick what he wanted, right?
Right.
I know that, also with Itzapalal, calling it obsidian or clawed butterfly, that could be like a bat as well, which could kind of work into some of his vibes. But yeah, there's a lot of like dark and death stuff that he picked up, just a la carte. But he reveals his evil plan, and he reveals that within his evil plan, he's like, yeah, so I made this a singularity because I got a holy grail and I set up the Grail War, so it's gonna suck if those guys don't kill themselves. But I got a backup plan because you know what I also got? I got some tree clippings from that other tree I planted, and he reveals that he's got leftover bits of the roots of the Lostbelt tree that was going to form in Shimosa at Onreido Castle, and he turns that into a tree proper. Boom, tree. Turns everything into eternal night with a blood red moon. This gives me big Okami vibes from a lot of these sections.
It really does now that I think about it.
Yeah, and he creates a giant tree, and then he's just like, all right, now I'm gonna chill because I'm gonna summon forth my 8 Onmyoji god generals. And he does. He starts summoning. And this is where we get our extras. So our second phase, the second version of the map, we've got all these guys on our side. We got a shitload of Genji warriors. Raiko's here. Suna's here. Kintoki's still with us. Rhyme and Medea Lily are not really combat capable, but can support us. Danzo's obviously still with us. So we got a wide selection of allies to go through. This is the first time but not the only time, Karoko busts back into the setting. She's like, hold on. I have been told to deliver you this letter. What is the letter? Fucking magic Abe no Seme texts. I love it.
I mean, it literally is just fucking Abe and Salmon basically sent Murasaki over with a cell phone. He just texts you all day.
Yeah. Like, it is described as floating letters appear, which obviously in the fluff for her servant version, which appeared earlier, that is, explicitly something Murasaki can do, is she can use magic to make letters appear. Normally, it's kind of like a curse, her caption effect, but, this is just Abe no Seme texts. You get to jive about how, actually, in the future, sending text messages over the airwaves is pretty popular. But yeah, and so, by the way, once again, shout out to Seme.
Listen, I don't care what anyone says. Amane Seme is literally just Japanese Merlin. Literally, even the personality is the fucking same.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he's a little less teasing to us. He's definitely not that to Doman. He's just like, and I love that he's just like, yeah, Doman, that fucking doofus. That imbecile. That idiot. He's dumb. He's a dumb duty head. Anyway, you can solve this. It's no problem. He was a goofus who didn't realize that, the 7 guys could just quit. So he did come up with a backup plan. Just do this stuff I tell you. But I also love the sheer balls this man has, where he's just like, yeah, I'm not even here right now. I'm not in town, and I'm not coming back to town. So here's how you solve this. Well, no, I think that they do explicitly solve some stuff with Doman as a character, as an individual character, later. That's also in the epilogue. The only time that technically Abe no Seimei appears, though not on screen. But he's physically there, because he approaches Doman and is like, you dumb idiot, you can't commit suicide, you're immortal, right? Remember? And Doman's like, oh yeah, I am immortal. That wouldn't do anything. Just, learn your lesson and stop trying to compete with me and with other people. You don't really care about it, I don't really care about it.
I totally feel that the fact that they don't have a sprite for Abe no Seimei right now means that they're probably going to make him summonable in the future.
Yes. I think a lot of people have that vibes. I think it was it Loth? Somebody joked about how them doing this Castoria raid up right before the New Year's and the new Lostbelt drop would be like, ooh, is it time for another broken support caster? I totally feel like Seimei would be a big get, because obviously character-wise, a lot like Merlin and a lot like even like a lot of our other characters, he has a lot of influence to other people.
Now that I think about it, the writer that came out with Tunguska, that's basically Chinese Merlin. That was also at the end of the year. Merlin's first raid up was at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're having some thoughts.
I said maybe New Year's for him.
Yeah, maybe at New Year's we'll see him. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Taigon Wong was definitely Taikobo was framed as like, kind of a similar role to Merlin. He was definitely an adversary to Lady Daji and stuff. I think the game even points out he probably should have been a caster, but was summoned as a writer instead for reasons, to let them spread it out. They could probably do a lot with Abe no Seimei, but yeah, no, mythologically, there's a reason why a lot of people compare him to the Japanese Merlin. He is overly mythologized. He could have been a real guy. Like, there are attestations of a member of the Abe clan, in his roles, probably Abe no Seimei. But also, he's, like, super tied into a lot of our other characters, like, obviously, the relationship with Tamamo. Though I think it's interesting that as a heroic spirit, caster of Limbo, the heroic spirit, Ashia Doman, is, like, really not over his Seimei thing. As a heroic spirit, Tamo's definitely over it. She's just like, that dingus. I don't like him. I don't want to talk about him. But she's not like, I curse his name. If I were ever to see him, I would punch him. She might punch him anyway, but,
I'm about to say, no, I'm pretty sure she's going to punch him, but it's not going to be, because of some deep-seated curse. It's just because she sees him and she gets really fucking irritated.
Yes. Because you get the impression that, he's not a bad guy, he's just an annoying guy.
Classic Merlin.
Yeah. Though, funnily enough, especially with Tamo, the funny thing is that, like, mythologically, Abe no Seimei is connected to foxes. It's very famous in the most popular part of the Kabuki play that is about him and Ashia Doman, and Doman's name is fucking in it. The most popular part is Act 4, which is titled separately Kuzunoha, which is Abe no Seimei's mother, who is a kitsune spirit, according to legends.
The golden fur white-faced fox, I believe?
I don't think it's directly related to golden furred whiteface, but yeah, Kuzunoha is her name. So yeah, there's foxy connections there, which are funny. But also it does mean that Abe no Seimei is supposed to be, non-human. He was supposed to have dangerous supernatural powers as a young child. He was said to be able to command, Oni, and his mother was like freaked out and so got him taught spiritual arts to put him right. Very similar to like some interpretations that Merlin was supposed to be the Antichrist, but because he was baptized, we negated that. And he's just a weird boy.
Weird boy living his best life.
Getting kicked by Foe. Another shame, by the way. Doman did not give Foe a pass into this story.
I'm trying to remember.
Foden.
Sorry, I'm just.
By the way, I'm not shitting you. Like, when I was doing my research for the Doman Wanted, there is actually a whole like classical Japanese play which can be interpreted in a couple of formats. Kabuki is one of them that has his name in it, and it's like the most sympathetic portrayal of him. Like, he is the main character for several of the acts, and he's not really a bad guy. He does bad things, but that's because it's about courtly intrigue. He is assigned to operate with bad lords who are like, yo, curse this guy, kill this guy. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Because, my sister is, is part of this political intrigue, etc., etc. My master's part of this political intrigue. But literally, there is a most popular part that is about Abe no Seimei's mother and her relationship with Abe no Seimei's father. Like, that is, like, usually the part that is shorter and is broken out. It's kind of funny. poor Doman is eclipsed even in a work that is titled after him. Anyway, we got off about Abe no Seimei because he's a cool dude who communicates via text boxes, and I love that he's just like, Doman, that blithering idiot, that giant doofus, that big stupid doo-doo head. He's an idiot, a fool. I have come to clown on him, by which I mean I didn't come at all. I stayed home.
I can clown on him from here.
Yes, I can. He is such a foolish fool that I can clown on him from over here. I don't even have to leave my vacay spot. But anyway, the serious problem is that Doman is using his extra command seals and stuff to and his authority over the Grail and the fact that he has the Holy Grail to summon extra people, his Onmyoji, his Onmyoji god generals, to summon them so he can feed them to the tree because he can use that energy to turn this place into a Lostbelt. And later some other stuff. I don't remember exactly when he introduces that, but I think the bulk of his dialogue is later when Ibuki shows up. He actually outlines what he's actually doing. And then that was all a lie, so he outlines what he was actually doing. Doman's got like 3 layers of plan here, guys. Or Limbo, I should say. And I gotta be honest, with the way his dialogue works and the way he talks to himself, I don't actually know, like, which plan Limbo is on. Like, I think all of these could have been his plan A at any given time, and then he was just like, you know what? That's dumb. I'm gonna make plan C plan A. Now it's a backup. Like, he just does a lot of fucking around. I enjoy it, but it definitely makes, like, did he actually mean this to be his primary plan, or did he decide to do the switch at literal the last minute while he was talking to himself? I don't know. But he's basically summoning, kind of evilized heroic spirits, demonic corpse Shikigami with heroic spirits in him. Very vague of the 7 sword masters from Shimosa, right? They even got the same red eyes. And the first 2 he summons are, they have, Onmyoji god names that I don't remember, but it's Tota and Suzuka. By the way, they do a really freaky thing with their in-game voice lines with the filter.
Oh, yeah, no, I thought that was neat.
Yeah, very, very good. It was a little subdued. I didn't catch it at first, but when Suzuka did her NP in the first fight you do, I was like, hold on a minute, this sounds wrong. I, open up my ears, I listen closely, I'm like, whoa, they put a filter over this. This is neat. But yeah, so basically, they're walking straight up Main Street, they're going to touch the tree and kill themselves and get the goop in, and Abe no Seimei's letter has to explain. Obviously, you don't need to worry about them doing that far away, because otherwise they would just do it right when they were summoned. But you do have to worry about if they die, their spirits will be cycling in the Grail. So here's what you do. Here's 8 talismans I prepared earlier, with extras, just in case. So you gotta break their spirit cores, then slap the seals on them, and basically they'll get kicked off this back to the Throne of Heroes right away with no time for their spiritual energy to linger around. So the Tota Suzuka fight is a little rough. I didn't have too much trouble with it. It's definitely a little chaotic, I think, with the classes they've got, because it's Saber and Archer.
I'm gonna be real. It took me for a year to figure out that you could do damage. That you had to do damage right after they use their NP.
Yeah, I at least knew that from writing the pregame. But even when you do that, like, I did so much like long-term planning with my invols. I think I busted out my Jean for this even more. Like, okay, I want to make sure I can always tank through an NP turn because that's when I can do the damage. And there was a lot of juggling and strategizing to make that one work. It's an interesting concept, but with the way even AoE NPs work, that's a lot of damage. It's really, really hard to wrestle with. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. My Jean stall is not necessarily a stall. It was more of a tactical, like, okay, we're gonna do all of our NP buildup so that when the bad turn comes, we're gonna block it all and then we're gonna get him. But again, there's a lot of that legacy stuff we talked about later. Like, these 2 spirits are from the era before even our Heian-kyo team, right?
Right.
Like, Suzuka herself has basically faded into like myth as a legendary warrior, and Tota as well is like really important in his relationships. The Genji warriors even have a little bit of a hard time dealing with them and their noble phantasms. They do come up with a actual really cool strategy though. Because they are now heroic spirits, to activate their noble phantasms, they have to say the true name. Which means that there is a moment while they are speaking the chant that they can actually be interrupted, which Raiko and Sune use to get the killing blow. I thought that was actually like a really cool touch. Because Fate doesn't usually actually bring up the fact that is a requirement of how heroic spirits work. You have to speak the true name to activate the noble phantasm in its most powerful form. And then technically you have to say the true name and do the whole chant and stuff too. So that's really neat that they actually like made that a proper part of the fight. But this is just a kind of an excuse for a lot of like, Kintoki to keep being like, what am I fighting for? Why am I doing this? It would sure suck if this guy, created the Naraka Mandala and turned this place into hell on earth forever. But like, why would it suck? It takes Kintoki a little while to figure that one out. I don't really have any more extra... This is where we get very boss rushy, and I think we start to bounce from characters to characters really fast. With Suzuka and Tota, it's kind of interesting because we've met them before. normally in kind of a non-hostile sense. Suzuka kind of is an enemy we have to deal with in CCC, but she's not very serious about it.
Yeah.
So, and Tota was, a helpful goobus in Camelot, so he didn't really do a lot in the plot, but he was okay. I was evidenced by the fact that he gets cut out of the movie version was he didn't really do a lot.
Like here, rice. Here, like again, I think the point here is they're supposed to represent a physical challenge, but also kind of a mental one.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of mocking and being all like, "Are you not stronger than this?"
Yeah.
And whatnot. And the thing I appreciate is they actually do have a reason for it. Because, even if they are just a corpse taken over, they are still who they are. We have some sick CG of, Suzuka, well, not, I don't want to call it sick, but we have some CG of, Suzuka crying tears of blood out of frustration and whatnot.
And there's a couple, there's a new sprite for her and stuff in there. There's some extra details in these moments. And it is interesting to see, even when they're being, all cold and are being mocking sometimes, the language still follows through, Suzuka has some of her more, JK speech patterns.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see that position, and then it's a good moment. And I think with pre-established characters, this kind of format works, because it's just, the context of, one section of the story, right? So it plays very well. Our next couple sections, though, are a little more broad, and this is the part where we talk about the things. So the next two Onmyoji who are summoned are, I even forgotten his name, but the Big Daddy Tsuchigumo, the Big Chungo one, and Taira no Kagikio. I mean, that's not his proper name, because that's not at all what his fucking role is. He's a big Tsuchigumo guy. But Kagikio appears, and Kagikio is, as a heroic spirit who is the death of Genji, has the ability to make all the Genji warriors just kind of, keel over and die, basically. Danzo catches the recon and reports it back to everybody, and so we're like, okay, so we can't send our main Genji force and our Genji, warriors out to fight this person, because that would not go over very well. They would be able to overpower us. We need to work on this. And you also have a quiet conversation with Danzo, kind of an aside, where she's like, also, by the way, totally this physical personage, this is definitely Minamoto no Yoshitsune. This is Ushiwakamaru's body, being piloted by Kagikio. And we're like, yes, it's very interesting. We'll deal with that bridge when we come to it. Literally, we do it on a bridge.
I mean, we do a reenactment. It's
pretty neat. But first, we do have this interesting moment where we have to go to Mount Oe, because Kintoki's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to recruit the Oni. Because they probably don't want the city to be destroyed and be, fucking demonic and shit. And we know that Shuten was kind of involved in this nonsense, so she's obviously strong. So we're just gonna have a conversation with her. And Kintoki is like, I'll go. Obviously, her and Raiko just had a moment, only a couple days ago, Tsuna cut off Ibaraki's arm. So Kintoki, will go. I've got a little bit of a back and forth with them. We'll have this talk, and we'll see if we can't hash it out. And while at first Ibaraki is like, oh, you want to ask me for help? Damn, you dumb. I'm gonna beat you up. And then Shuten just fucking karate chops her.
It's not even that. She just grabs her. Wait, no, she doesn't know. No, it was a bonk.
The first one is she just bonks her on the back of the head. The second time is she plants her like a tree, which is also hilarious. Yeah. And then she says she pulls her out of the ground later. I can only assume Shuten just grabs Ibaraki at one of the horns and just pulls.
That's how you properly talk to Oni.
Yeah, so you do have another little Ibaraki showdown, the second of 3. But then after that, you have this conversation with Shuten. This is where we get a lot more of that Shuten characterization, where you get the idea that, Oni are really fickle. You can't really trust what they say, because what their mood strikes them as is, can be very violent and chaotic. Shuten might actually like you as a person, but also she's not going to, that doesn't mean just because she likes you, she's not going to randomly decide, you know what, you'd look better with one less arm.
Well, there's a line that they said, I think he says, Oni eat what they like, and, no, they eat things they love. And stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact line, but I thought it was very poignant.
Yeah.
It's like they only are driven to acts of destruction no matter what.
Yes. They are kind of we don't really dissect exactly what Oni kind are, but in the yokai lore, they have a couple of different roles. Generally, they are associated with bad fortune and, natural disasters and stuff. So it kind of makes sense that as, a demonic species, their kind of role that is assigned to them by human mystery and belief is, They are kind of a chaotic force, a force of misfortune and destruction. They can be organized, Shuten kind of proved that, I think, just to prove that she could, but that doesn't mean that they won't just, fuck your shit up just for kicks. This is yet another time where Shuten offers, to gouge out our eyes and stuff. And it's like, okay, thanks, Shuten. But she does get on her side, and then we jog back, and on the way, Kintoki is like, hey, so what's this Kagikio person about? What's their deal? What's this Ushiwaka person you're talking about? So we kind of actually, do explain to him, like what Ushi Wakamaru's story is, and again, remember, she's descended from the Minamoto clan, the Genji warriors, a couple generations in the future, the winners of the Genpei War. And so Kagikio pauses for a second. We get a little bit of backstory here, about what Taira no Kagikio is, all the attempts on Ushi's brother, one of the Yoris. Yoritomo, right. Sorry. They have a very similar naming scheme, so it's like,
yes,
one of those guys, yeah. And how originally, the original Taira no Kagikio was, a Taira lord who was defeated and sought revenge, but there were no less than 37 attempts on Yoritomo's life, and all of them were Kagikio, because Kagikio is eternal, that kind of stuff. Very classic Japanese vengeful ghost bullshit, which I love. Like, just anybody who's mad at Yoritomo can be Kagikio. And obviously, it's explained, as Minamoto no Yoshitsune, Ushi has a reason to be a little annoyed at Yoritomo, because they were, siblings, and Yoshitsune did a lot of heavy lifting for Yoritomo in winning the Genpei War, and then because Yoshitsune was, popular and skilled, and also Yoritomo's wife was conniving, scary lady, Ama Shogun, very scary lady, very serious, good at what she does. She convinced Yoritomo to kind of flip on Yoshitsune, so Ushi has reason to be upset at Yoritomo and at the Genji faction. But Yoshitsune / Taira no Kagikio stops at a bridge and is like, yeah, this bridge is pretty cool. I think I did a thing here. And then Kintoki rolls up on the bridge and is like, hey, you know that thing? We're gonna reenact that thing.
And Taira's like, don't you reenact that thing. Kintoki's like, I'm gonna do it.
Don't you dare do it. You're doing the fucking Benkei speech, you little... And he's like, yeah, I'm doing the Benkei speech. And I love the moment where Kagikio actually slips up and is like, shut the fuck up, Benkei. And that's when you're like, we're in it. So you have this conflict with Kagikio a couple of times, where eventually Kintoki doing the reenactment manages to piss off Kagikio enough to kind of be more Yoshitsune-esque, kind of let that part come to the forefront, and turn it into another, deathmatch, stage match, and clock it out. And Kintoki goes full force, even though he's, in serious danger of getting dead from this. He even gets struck a couple of times because he has still been adopted into the clan. He is still a Genji warrior, even though, Shuten is on your side, and just fucking tears apart that Tsuchigumo. Just kicks his ass. And at the end, there's some sad CGs, you get to see Ushi face Yoshitsune, blue eyes and all. There's kind of a fun, poignant moment where Kintoki is like, well, boss, I've been poisoned, so I'm probably gonna die soon. This is not really what I wanted to do, but, we won the fight, so that's cool. And then
everybody's like, I don't know anything about death poems. Can you help me, Mouse Ball? And you're just like, no.
Yeah, no.
That's not how this works.
He's like, buddy, I'm dying. Can you spin me a death poem? And you're like, no.
Get up.
You're fine. Really? Wasn't I gonna die? No, yeah, it was a noble phantasm effect. It was the servant. The servant's dead. There's no poison. There's no poison for Genji. Poison specifically made to kill Genji.
I know you did.
Genji's poison. What? I'm sorry. It's just become such a thing for us while recording. It just, I feel compelled every time.
If we use proper noun, we do the fucking Cusco bit every single time.
Yes. Every time we talk about the poison and a proper noun, it's like, okay. It's the whole bit. It's gotten to the point where I'm not even, doing it straight on anymore. I just go through the motions. We'll get bored of it someday. Maybe.
That day is not today, though.
No, but yeah. And, Shuten has some funny lines in here, too. But yeah, you pick him up and you're like, okay, cool, we're good. All right. Well, we'll all reconvene, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's because that's like sections 13 and 14, or 12 and 13. Because 14 is Ibuki, and then 15 is Doman, and then 16 is Epilogue. I think I'm remembering that right. So this is the part we talked about. You guys go back to base, and then a whole bunch of Oni start marching down the mountain, and I love the story framing in this, where it's like, it's really weird. Even Ibaraki is like, hey, where are you guys going? I just woke up. Why are we all leaving? And then just Ibaraki meets Ibuki and is just like, I must go down the mountain. Tall lady is tall. She is the boss now. So your whole party is like, why is there a fucking Oni army marching into our city? And Shuten's like, I don't fucking know. I'm here. Boy, you think this is my thing? So you confront him. This is the part where, you fight Ibaraki for the third time. And then, like I said, because she feels compelled to, keep fighting and marching towards the tree, you have to bunkle her one more time. Shuten, plants her in the ground. And that's when Ibaraki shows up. No, not Ibaraki, Ibuki. It's very confusing. All the dojis are also hard. She's very tall.
Yes.
I really like the expressions she fulfills that very, classy, stronger than you kind of oh, you're approaching me? I love that kind of eye narrowing, oh, you're interesting, you're neat. It even shows up in her fight mechanics. One of her NPC buff is, make me draw this sword. You won't. You're not going to do it. And we learn very quickly that this is Ibuki Doji, the god of Mount Ibuki, is a real deal. This is an actual divine spirit. So she is a god. She is also a divided spirit, a bunrei from Yamato no Orochi, the, biggest deal evil dragon in Japanese mythology. It's kind of a big thing that was going on there. Very, very seminal to the myths. That is why she has the Kusanagi, because that is the thing that was under Orochi's tail that Susanoo picked up and included. He gave it as a I'm sorry gift to his sister,
who's Amaterasu, which is interesting because Tamamo is that bunrei.
Yes. Tamamo is Amaterasu's divided spirit. There's an interesting thing here when Domon does the third stage of this and the sky turns white with the black sun, where I think it is Ibuki says, "Oh, I've never seen Amaterasu in this shade. That's kind of weird. Neat.
I don't like this.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate." But yeah, so because of this, Ibuki Doji is really powerful. She is obviously there are the three great yokai of Japan, but there are also many other classic monsters, big three, and Orochi is one of those. He is one of the most important and biggest deal threats, because I would like to point out, to show you how much of a boss he is, Susanoo is the god of storms and lightning and stuff. He's a pretty tempestuous guy. He managed to throw a temper tantrum so bad, that's when Amaterasu hid in the cave for a while. He's pretty fierce. To defeat Yamato no Orochi, he had to do the get him drunk trick.
We really like that trick, by the way.
Yes. I feel like there's a lot of symbolism in the use the sacred wine to knock out the bad guy and then shank them. There's definitely a lot of metaphor here. Booze is important, but also be careful about how much booze you drink. Gets Orochi drunk and cuts off all his heads, and under one of his tails he finds the Kusanagi, which becomes an Imperial Regalia. But yeah, so again, big deal, and because of that, that's why Ibuki seems to have this authority to command all the Onis, because she is the biggest, scariest monster here. She's really tall. They explicitly talk about how she gets an extra meter when she switches to combat mode or something. Lots of big, scary lady vibes. She has that gravity effect, basically, the spirit pressure effect, just like Zeus had. Even reuses the same special effect visually. So, we play up how big of a deal she is. Because Kintoki is, really mad and I'm not giving up just because you're strong, lady. He decides to fight her. There's a very interesting moment that is that thing we talked about where, I feel like Ibuki and Shuten were supposed to have more interaction that got cut. There's a very small beat here where Shuten is, because it's, while we're doing our exposition dump, we figure out that, Ibuki and Shuten share the same origin, because they're both supposed to be descendants of the serpent god. And so, basically, Shuten and Ibuki could be seen as different aspects of the same thing. Ibuki is the aspect as a god, Shuten is the aspect as an Oni, a monster, And Shuten says something where "Hey, Ibuki, it's my turn right now." And she puts on her scary eyes, and I'm like, ooh. And then that doesn't really go anywhere. It's a really interesting beat. I've always said that I really like how Fate handles, the bunrei concept, Mm-hmm. The idea that you can basically just fork or relocate a deity and it becomes a new one, and that plays really interesting in Shintoism. So there's definitely, I wish that we could have gotten into that a little bit more, about how, they can be the same person, but they're different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm kind of sad that I didn't get expanded on. But it's still a really neat note. And it does at least justify why Shuten basically fights herself, kind of. Because she's kind of mad. She's like, whoa, hold on. I'm supposed to be in charge here. But you don't even really put a big scratch on Ibuki. You fight her. She's very amused. She thinks about killing you and slurping up your blood and stuff. But then Domon gets out his TV phone and he's just like, no, don't worry about that. Hey, don't do that. There's nothing to worry. Just come on down to my place. Roll through my gate. Join my tree. I'm going to turn you into a new foreign god, a new great Satan. And this is where he explains that his plan is basically allegedly to create a backup body for the foreign god. Because the one they've got is cool, but what if he made them better? Because, boy howdy, he really likes Lucifer the great Satan, the foreign god. It'd be real cool if he had his own, If he had one at home. So he's going to make one at home. And yes, that is really fucked up and possessive. It gets worse, but anyway, we're not there yet. Quite. And so Ibuki just leaves us alone. Just okay, I'm going to go. Bye. And again, that's one of those moments where you're like, was there supposed to be more here or not? I don't know. Ibuki really does come out of left field and then just fucking leaves. I assume Domon does this telephone call because he wants you to live so you see all of his great plan, because he is an incredibly obvious egotist and is just has to let you know that he's won. But then you get to the section about Domon. Domon is basically actually, I lied. He does this whole monologue to camera with Michinaga there, and he's just yeah, so, I said all that stuff about how I'd create a new beast, a new body for my foreign god. Yeah, I thought that at first, but then I decided, what would be even better? What if I was the body for my foreign god? What if it was me, Limbo? So I'm going to eat them, and then I'm going to become an evil of humanity. And then he does that part. But he doesn't become
Well, he
evil
tried-
humanity.
I was about to say, he tries to do that part.
Yeah, he does the eat part. Ibuki shows up and he's like, actually, fooled you. Gonna eat you now. And then, we show up moments later and he's like, Mwahaha, my tree is complete. It will bloom again. It's real fucked up. I'm going to become a beast, an evil of humanity, a great calamity. And I'm gonna become the vessel for my foreign god. And then he's like, where's the big kaboom? I was
It really
promised a
is
big kaboom.
It is literally that, and it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, no. And then, of course, Kaoruko has to bust in with another letter, and Abe no Seimei is like, hey, dumbass, you can't become a beast, you stupid idiot. And then you, the master, get to drop, and it's like, yeah, guy, you fundamentally have misunderstood how this process works. And we get to reiterate the point we like to talk about a lot. The beasts are something humanity is supposed to overcome. And also, we also bring up, and I think it's Abe no Seimei who does in his text, but also, a requirement to become a beast is you have to love humanity.
Yes.
The reason why you become an evil is because you have such a strong love, such a strong affection for mankind that your motives become twisted. We've seen this with all the major beasts we've seen. Geitia, Beast of Pity, was so piteous of us and our limited lives that he thought it was better to destroy us all and start over and spare us the problem, right?
Right.
Tiamat, regression, love of mother. She loved humans so much she wanted them to revert to being her children and return to her. Kiara's only half a beast, but her, fucked up thing is she does love humans. She sees herself as the only human. She is the ultimate expression of, really fucked up self-love. Kama is, love for humanity so strong that it spreads her love everywhere so that there is no love, basically. And we'll see what exactly happens with Koyan Sky. We know she's trying to become a beast, but she's maybe not quite there yet. We also don't know what the foreign god as Beast 7 is also supposed to represent, because we know that it's weird, The foreign god manifested using Beast 7 as its spirit origin, so... But yeah, basically, we explain that Doman can't ever become a beast because he doesn't love humanity. He sees them as, little toys or bugs to crush. This is kind of funny, but, I've said this before, I recently watched through a whole series of Let's Play of Final Fantasy VII Remake again. Doman gives me, Professor Hojo vibes. At one point, Hojo is, he's more sadistic than experimental, but, they're still both really fucked up. Hojo at one point says, oh, I'm never sad to see my toys break. Doman's kind of the same way. The breaking is the point for him. And because of that, he doesn't really have any love, so he can't become a beast. So now he's just, a high servant who's fused to a tree, and he's really strong. I do also by the way, he calls out that, he wants to be the Lostbelt king. He can't allow there to be two kings, because he knows that will fuck up. Again, very
Specifically calls out, the first Lostbelt.
Yeah. So he's yeah, that won't work. But even so, he's, really strong, and he's just well, okay, I couldn't become a beast. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna kill you guys, and then I'm gonna kill everybody. I'm gonna just kill everything, and that'll be fun enough for me. I'm gonna take my murder ball and go home. Yeah, the second one also had a problem because Surtur came along and kind of tried to hijack kingship.
Yeah.
And that's when Kintoki is you fucking what, mate? And this is where Kintoki gets his big moment, his literal hero transformation moment, where he's you know what, fuck you. And actually, we technically skipped over a chapter. There's a whole build-up chapter where you just fought Seeds of the Tree again, because the tree was blooming and freaking out. It was just kind of pack filler. I think they used it to give you an excuse to not be there right away so that you didn't have to fight Ibuki again, and also basically to space out fights so that there was time for necessary dialogue. It's kind of unnecessary. I think it was cool to see the Seeds again, and it was thematically interesting how they were also alter egos. It was not necessary at all, so it was just kind of a thing they did. But yeah, so Kintoki is I figured out what my thing is. I care about people. I care about little kids. I care about, hard working ladies. I care about dudes trying to make food for their family. I care about all humans. Humans are golden. And you say you're going to murder all of them? Fuck you, buddy. I am a babyface wrestler, and you are going to get stomped. Which is basically what it is. It kind of turns into a wrestling match. Kintoki even invents a new finishing move for this.
He does.
But he also talks about how he's, he reveals that he is in fact a morphing hero, just like we said he was. He is the Tokusatsu, and he activates his secret armor, and we're oh yeah, it's time! Golden Bear!
Well, if I'm understanding this correctly, I think it was kind of a spur of the moment thing, because they were talking about how no one could activate the armor before this, and people had hopes.
Yeah. The armor was a secret weapon of the Genji that they built out of a ship from a distant land. A distant land ship. Perhaps...
Of unknown technology.
Perhaps some kind of space-based ship. Because we already know, in Olympus, this thing turned into Ares. So, maybe. I don't know. It's just, even if it's not directly that, it's close enough that, it kind of back explains some stuff. That was cute. But yeah, it was like a secret weapon that nobody could really figure out what to do with, and then Kintoki powers it up with his lightning and transforms. And I fucking love this boss fight. Great.
Oh, it's great.
I'm kind of sad there was no sick, like, Doman rave music. I think it was just the normal fantasy grand battle music, or kind of Japanese grand battle music. It was okay. Not my favorite, but it was still... I'm kind of sad, like I said. I talk about this. I feel like maybe because of the time constraints, we didn't have a lot of extra music. There were a couple of new themes that are pretty cool. There wasn't really a lot of new battle music, which makes me a little sad. But you see the mech with you, and you have replacement master skills. I fucking love when they do that. It's hype every time. You do animations for it. And basically, you settle the fight. Kintoki's gonna cut down the tree because Ibuki is still alive in the tree, even though Doman's like, "What? This cannot be! I digested you!" And Ibuki's like, "Nah, no you didn't." Gives Kintoki the Kusanagi, and so he's like, "I'm gonna cut down the tree, you guys punch Doman." We caught up to you. You're doing pretty good. But yeah, this is just a cool fight. It's a little complex, but I do like the aspects in it, and I called this out, the little animation on what cards are burned, right?
Oh yeah.
So you can track all that, you can work around it. It's a tree fight, but it's pretty standard, but it's pretty fun. And then at the end, it turns into a big fucking anime-ass conclusion. You do this whole thing, he gets stabbed, he gets filled full of light, you cut down the tree. Doman starts monologuing because he's like, "I'm going to activate the secret spell in my brain and blow myself up. I'll die, but so will they." And that's like a victory, isn't it? Doman is that guy who's constantly moving the goalposts. That's really all this is. Like, not just positive ways, but in negative ways, where he's like, "Well, I'm going to explode, but they'll explode too, so sucks for them. Sucks to suck, I guess." But, we give him the big slice again, and Danzo technically gets the killing blow when he's still like, "I'm still melting, but I'm going to get you." And Danzo, nukes him with her NP attack, and then he explodes. Bah! The tree is dead, the day is saved. We have finally punched that clown.
It's a good day.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. Like I said, there are a lot of big showy CGs and animations and stuff. Kintoki summoning the golden bear is like a full animation thing. He's a lightning bolt that comes down. It's real good. A lot of good shit here. And then it's just the chapter 16 is just the epilogue and the denouement. We get some resolution with characters. Rhyme and Medea get unsummoned. They have some kind of, resolution with their masters. We have that conversation with Kintoki we talked about earlier where Kintoki's still like, "Yeah, I'm still curious. Who the fuck was my servant?" Because Abe no Seimei revealed that as alter ego, Limbo, he had himself be the final master, and he was the last servant. So he was the seventh caster, kind of, but he was the alter ego. So I guess that's another theory that, like, because Doman abused the system to summon himself as an alter ego, Kintoki was the odd man out, but also then Doman was supposed to be the seventh master, so it doesn't make sense. I don't think the math works out.
Like I said, I like my theory the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of good theories. Again, because they don't explicitly explain it, I think it's open to interpretation. I do like the Kintoki's first theory was that Limbo was his servant, and that just like because they were working at odds, that was his deal to get stuck with a bad partner. Mm. It's very funny, but no, it's not. That's not how it works. And he's still like, "He was my servant all along," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go with that." I don't think we really need to break down any more epilogue stuff, though. We've kind of talked about a lot of the moments. It's pretty cool. I was a little surprised about how text heavy it was for 2 no battle pips. Because, like I said, I was tapping away at this as time was rolling up for me to start the 14 stream last week. Not yesterday, a couple days ago now. And I was like, okay, is there an ending in here? And I'm like, oh, we keep going. I like all this stuff, but I was kind of surprised we got those extra bits. That, again, could be kind of the vibe from this getting compressed. But yeah, like, ultimately, you have your final talk with Kintoki. You're all really cool. You kind of explain to him that, like, he's not going to remember and you got to go home. And he's just like, "Yeah, I don't care about that. I'm fine. I had a golden time. You're the best boss." Like, "Oh, thanks, Kintoki." And then you roll on home. You have your talk with everybody about how it worked out, all that fun stuff. You talk with Kame and Kintoki again, and he's just like, "Hey, how was things?" And you're like, "It was golden." And
he's like, "Hell yeah!"
Golden. Even Fo gets on. I talked about it earlier, but we get food and very solid breakdown. Good denouement. There's a scene we talked about earlier where real life Ashidoman talked with Seimei about like, is he doomed to be a bad dude? And Doman's like, and Seimei's like to Doman like, I don't know about that. That guy had his own problems. There's definitely an interesting thing I talked about in the one where, because he is an alter ego or becomes an alter ego, there's definitely a possibility that the Limbo we see is not a perfect representation of all the sides of Doman. But they do also say in that same dialogue box that, according to Murasaki Shikabu, the actual Doman was kind of a weird, scummy guy anyway. Which is interesting because the Doman we meet in the Heian-kyo is not that, but also, it could be at, different time periods and stuff. Also, singularities have time disruptions in them. But we basically get follow-up on, the Mount Oe crew, on Doman, and a lot of stuff, and we go home. Usually, we like to spend, like, an extra couple of hours, like, dissecting all the Lostbelty themes. But this Lostbelt doesn't really have quite the same like type of themes and characters. There's no Cryptor. Limbo is kind of the Lostbelt king, but kind of not, right? You know, we don't run into a beast here, actually. And while Limbo is an agent of the foreign god, he's not really acting in that capacity anymore, right? Like, he basically goes home, and then he's like, well, actually, I want to have a foreign god of my own. Yeah, Ibuki kind of becomes the Lostbelt king, because that was, like, one of Dobin's plan, but also not really. I mean, she narratively fills the role of, like, the big heavy hitter we fight at the last minute, but this story is very fast, very streamlined. I like it a lot for, like, thematic reasons, right? Like, I talked about this earlier. I'm a big weeb. All these, like, really classical Japanese fantasy intermixed with a lot of the courtly stuff is really neat, you know? Talking about a lot of monsters and setup and stuff. You can definitely tell some of the seams where, like, you can tell they kind of trimmed some stuff down, you know? We talked about that before with, like, obviously the count of Cagliostro and, like, probably that conversation where we do talk to Shuten before we go about, like, too bad you didn't get to talk to Ibuki anymore. Anyway, bye. Ibuki got unsummoned when the tree was getting broken up. It is kind of fun to have a minimalist cast, you know? Like, sometimes stories like Lost Belts or other major story releases will drop a lot of new characters on you, and obviously you can tell they're supposed to be summonable. This really reused a lot of the cast that we had, you know? And I think ultimately the only, like, new characters are Tsuna and Ibuki. And that works out, you know? And obviously Limbo is summonable now, but he's been built up for a long time. But overall, I feel satisfied with our clown punching, you know? And you mentioned this earlier, Kintoki really feeling like the actual protagonist and having the actual character arc is pretty cool for once.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to the usual thing with Lost Belts is usually where we're like, we have to go through the character development of, once again, shit, we gotta kill all these people, kinda. But also, man, it's really fucked up here. You know, as you also brought up the line where we talk about at the end where, like, the master is just like, no, I got to, like, I didn't have to hold anything back here. I just let it all out and did my best, you know. And I talked about earlier how I also like these several dialogue points where people are like, oh, you've got fight in your eyes. What are you fighting for, kid? And you're like, I'm fighting to take back my world. So why I'm here, you know, it's neat. I think that the way they place this after you're done with it in main interlude is kind of like where this goes thematically, right? Like, ultimately, this isn't a completely necessary main story beat. It's still very thematically connected to the Lost Belts, and the prologue especially has a lot of important info you need, but it's also not super long-term important other than it establishes where the fuck Limbo went and what happened to him. He ran away like a little baby man, and then we punched him very hard. He exploded. Yeah, it's a really cool read, but plot-wise, it's very simple. And I appreciate that. I hope you guys appreciate that. Out there in the audience, let us know your thoughts if you're done with the chapter, if you're still here. But yeah, Lucky, any other final thoughts yourself about
Not
Heian-kyo?
really. I think we got almost what we need to get out.
All right. And there you have it, folks. Our last best of Let's Talk FGO recap of Lost Belts. For now, keep your eyes open and make sure to tune in this weekend for the next episode of Let's Talk FGO, where we'll be doing the Lost Belt 6 pregame, at least the first part. Again, don't know how I'm going to break that up yet. Haven't written those notes, been working on this. Also, keep your eyes peeled for a Wanted of Morgan as well. And we'll keep on keeping on. And obviously, if you like this, be sure to give us a like and sub for more stuff. Because once Lost Belt 6 actually drops, we'll be doing basically the unedited, expanded version of this, you know, for normal show stuff. First impressions, final thoughts, all that jazz. But with all that out of the way, I just want to really quick remind you that this episode was brought to you by our patrons like Adam DeHarp, Blacklist OG, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, Ferris, Flightless Icebird, Jeremy Vasquez, JDV9000, Jester LaFay, John and Sandoval, Chris Starlight, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Regent Raptor, Rogue Robin, Charvor, Sean Pryor, some guy named Bob, and Varian the Crow. And then if you want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. Could have gotten access to this episode in audio format and a little bit early. Can access audio for the podcast. Could have accessed the Wanted early. Lots of other good stuff. And I'll see you in the next show. Have a golden one, everybody.